Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook, Hogwarts, Start Fusion Phoenix Bloodline. Chapter 121. Peter's car came to pick up Peter's car. Peter had seen it long ago, but he didn't care about talking to the Weasley family just now. He took a few steps to the housekeeper Weasley who was standing at the exit and gave him a big hug. Long time no see, Wales. The young master has grown a lot, and it seems that he is doing well at school. The housekeeper Welsh said with relief after taking a closer look. Although Wales is only the housekeeper of Peter's family, he is actually no different from his relatives. The Welsh family has served the York family for generations and has been very loyal. Peter's father and Aunt Christine were raised by Welsh housekeepers, so the York family trusts him very much. Miss Christine is already waiting for you, let's get in the car. Wales opened the door for Peter. When he returned to York Manor, Peter saw his Aunt Christine, 050, who had been waiting early. Auntie, long time no see, you are still so beautiful. Peter smiled and gave Aunt Christine a close kiss. Ha ha, my handsome little Peter, haven't seen you for so long, do you miss Aunt? Kristen hugged Peter enthusiastically, gave him a hard kiss, and said resentfully, I miss you very much, I don't want to eat or drink. Because my little nephew doesn't write to me much since he went to that Hogwarts. Hearing his aunt's somewhat resentful tone, Peter couldn't help laughing, and then explained, the magic world can't use telephones and the like, and I'm not used to writing letters, so I send a little less. I'll send more in the future. You wrote, I promise. Immediately changed the subject and said, Auntie, do you know why the Queen named me to the banquet? Our York family doesn't seem to have much contact with their. I'm not too sure, but I just said that after the Christmas banquet tomorrow night, the Queen will see you alone, so that you have some mental preparations. Christine replied, looking at her nephew's confused look, and comforting, you don't have to think too much about it, you're a wizard now, don't worry too much about what's going to happen. You've been at school for so long, you must have some magic, show me. Speaking of using magic outside of school, Peter remembers that it was at the end of first year that the Ministry of Magic asked first-year students to sign an agreement not to use magic outside of school. But now there is no such notice over the Christmas holidays, I don't know if I will receive a warning letter from the Ministry of Magic. But since Auntie wanted to see it, Peter didn't refuse. Anyway, he didn't know the regulations of the Ministry of Magic, and even if he received a warning letter later, he could justifiably argue that he didn't know about it. What kind of magic do you want to see, Auntie? Peter asked, pulling out his wand, then turning to the housekeeper and saying, how about Wales, what kind of magic do you want to see? I can show it to you. As soon as the two heard Peter's words, they all gathered around with great interest. Aunt Christine said enthusiastically, show what you have. I've mastered a lot of magic, and if I show them one by one, it won't be over for a while. Peter said somewhat contentedly, then pointed his wand at the coffee table in front of him, and tapped the coffee table twice. The coffee table instantly turned into a green padded sofa. Peter sat on it, and said regretfully, this is transfiguration, but I can only transform between dead objects, and I can't animate them. Wow, this is already good. It's so amazing. Christine and the housekeeper Wales watched this scene in surprise. Christine not only said with some envy, the wizard doesn't have to cook anymore, he's just hungry. Just change food, and if you want to wear beautiful clothes, you can change clothes in a second. Magic also has to abide by certain restrictions. Delicious food cannot be created out of thin air, but it can be copied, that is, one food can be turned into enough for everyone to eat. Peter used his wand to read to the pastry, copy in pairs. In a blink of an eye, the refreshments on the table turned into 2 servings. So the story of Jesus feeding 5,000 people with 5 loaves and 2 fish is like using this magic. Christine said in surprise, looking at the 2 refreshments on the table. There are also rumors in the magic world that Jesus is a wizard who believes in God, but not many people believe it, thinking that it is just a slander by wizards. Peter shook his head and said. After skipping this topic, Peter pointed his wand at Christine with a smirk and said, Tarantara, then Christine stood up involuntarily and danced an elegant ballet. What's wrong with me? Peter, what have you done to me? Why do I keep wanting to dance and can't stop? Kristen shouted in panic, dancing gracefully. It's a mischievous spell, a simple spell in spellology that keeps people dancing all the time. Peter said with a smile, before a spell instantly lifted the spell on his aunt. It's very similar to the pair in the fairy tale, the red shoes that make people dance all the time. If I don't lift the spell, am I going to dance all the time? Christine heard the magic after the effect of the curse, he asked in shock. Yes, a lot of magic is very dangerous for ordinary people if you don't solve the spell. And it's just a spell used by little wizards to play pranks on each other. Peter nodded. This is terrible. If there are wizards who have bad intentions against ordinary people, isn't it very dangerous? Butler Welsh said worriedly, watching the effect of magic, they can treat ordinary people without knowing it. Enchanted, and we can't do anything about it. Don't worry, Wales. Peter smiled and comforted. There is also a government in the wizarding world called the Ministry of Magic, which stipulates that wizards cannot use magic in front of muggles, that is, ordinary people. Otherwise, they will be punished, and if it is more serious, they will be directly imprisoned in Azkaban, the prison of the magic world. The guards of the prison are a kind of terrible monster called Dementors. They usually feed on the positive emotions of human beings, also able to eat human souls. So no one dares to offend the ban. Hearing this, both of them calmed down a bit. Christine, who was atheist, was very surprised and asked, is there really a monster that eats souls? Does the soul really exist? Since wizards all exist, why don't souls exist? There are many ghosts living in Hogwarts Castle, Peter said amusingly, not understanding his aunt's brain circuit. I always thought wizards were people with superpowers. Christine explained, then asked in horror, you said your school had ghosts. Oh my god, how much of a school is your wizard school? Horrible, even ghosts. Ghosts aren't really scary, they can't hurt people, except that they get chilled when they walk through them. Peter explained, understanding ordinary people's fears of ghosts. At the same time, at the Ministry of Magic's Department for the Prohibition of Misuse of Magic, Lewis, the director at work, received a report from his subordinates that an underage wizard had used magic at Sloane Square in Chelsea County. Just give him a warning, Lewis said impatiently, asking him about such trivial matters. But that's Peter York, who just won the Merlin second class, and he's still a first-year student, and we didn't sign him an agreement not to use magic outside of school, and he's not breaking the rules. There's no way to give him a warning letter, Employee Hawk said with a wry smile. Hasn't this happened before? How did you deal with it before? Lewis asked curiously. This Peter is a genius. The students from the Muggle world learned at most a floating spell at this time, but he used more than a dozen magics just now. No wonder he was a little hero who was able to catch 2 dark wizards alone. Hawk said in amazement. Lewis had some headaches. Some laws set by the Ministry of Magic were always full of loopholes. If it was other students, he would have just sent warning letters and it would be fine. But now that he is a Merlin Medal winner in the limelight, it is not easy to do. He asked, so did Peter York use magic in front of Muggles? He uses magic in his manor, where there are only 2 of his relatives, Muggles, and no one else is there, Hawk replied. Then don't worry about him. Since he is in his own manor, and we didn't sign an agreement for him to prohibit the use of magic outside the school in advance, it's our fault. Lewis waved his hand and said, for this kind of special personnel, just be I didn't see it, to save trouble. Peter didn't know that he almost received a warning letter. After he showed his magic, he was dragged by his Aunt Christine to see her custom dress. After all, he was going to attend a banquet hosted by the royal family. It was too casual, so the dress was custom made early. Peter, this is my friend Tim Rosier, he's French, he's handsome. Kristen pulled Peter and introduced him with a smile to a man who was waiting at the door of the dress customization studio. Peter looked at his Aunt Christine in surprise. She had never introduced a man to him so solemnly. Look at her little woman-like expression, could she be planted on this French man? Hello, you're Peter, right? I'm Tim Rosier, French, and a friend of your aunt. Let's get to know you. The 1.9-foot-tall young man said kindly. Peter looked at the man, but suddenly looked at him warily, because he didn't think much of it when he heard his name just now, because the Rosier surname is common in France. But as soon as he took the man's hand, he felt a wave of magic in him. It was a wizard. Although he didn't know how a wizard became Christine's friend, he still calmly restrained his expression, changed his expression, and said shyly in French, hello. You can speak French, it's amazing. Tim Rosier said in surprise. Of course, my nephew can speak Chinese, Russian, and German, but he is very smart. Aunt Christine sold Peter directly and knew everything about her boyfriend. Really, it's really good, no wonder. Rosier said meaningfully with a surprised expression. Peter didn't know what was going on with this man, but he always felt that this man had bad intentions and opened his mind-reading skills directly, wanting to hear the man's real thoughts. Under the mind-reading technique, he tried his best to ignore the messy thoughts of his aunt on the side, and focused directly on Rosier's thoughts. Slowly, he saw a lot of Rosier's secrets, and his heart gradually filled with murderous intentions. He wished to give him an avada directly now. He lowered his head and pretended to be embarrassed to hide the killing intent in his eyes. Then there was a sneer. He wanted to play, then play with him. Rosier is clearly good at coaxing women, making Kristen laugh with just a few words and greet her occasionally. Although Peter was anxious when he saw this scene, he couldn't give him a death curse directly in public. That's right, Peter learned the knowledge of the death curse from Rosier by using mind reading. This spell is Rosier's most commonly used spell, and it was very impressive, so it was easily discovered by Peter. After finally getting rid of this Rosier, Peter dragged his reluctant aunt and hurried home. If he doesn't leave, he is afraid that this silly aunt will be deceived. Peter, don't you like Tim? I think he's pretty good. Although he's a French man, he doesn't bother, much better than my previous boyfriends. Tim Rosier. Don't like it. HMPH, I wish I could kill him. Peter said bitterly, his eyes full of killing intent. Kristen, who had never seen Peter like this, was taken aback and asked, "It's just the first time you met, why do you hate him so much?" "It's the first time we've met, but a bloody feud," Peter said through gritted teeth, then looked up at his Aunt Christine and said, "You must never touch him again. He's a wizard. His target for approaching you is me, exactly, it's my phoenix." "He's a wizard. Why do you know this?" Christine asked in disbelief. "Because I can read minds. I found out that he was a wizard the first time I contacted him, so I used mind reading to listen to his inner thoughts and discovered his evil thoughts," Peter said with hatred. Peter always thought that his parents, who died young, were unbelievably killed on the way due to natural disasters. But he saw in Rosier's mind the picture of when his parents were killed. He was there at the time, and he was one of the murderers of his parents. Just because their target was the phoenix egg that Peter's parents had sent back to China. When they found out that their target had been taken by two muggles, they killed Peter's mother in anger and then left Peter's father. Peter's father knew that if they found out that the phoenix egg had been sent back to York Manor, both Peter and Christine would die, so they endured the most painful torture and did not say a word until they were killed. Information. And the reason why they are chasing the Phoenix Order urgently is because they found a magic that can be perfectly resurrected from an ancient magic book. It is used to resurrect the weak Voldemort hidden in the Albanian forest. In the 10 years before Harry Potter entered school, Voldemort didn't do nothing, but prepared various ways to resurrect. One of the most perfect resurrection methods is the potion alchemy using the blood of the phoenix as the main material, so the resurrected body has the most powerful magic power. However, phoenixes are also very rare in the magic world, and they are difficult to capture until they find out that there are traces of phoenixes in the Amazon forest of South America, and after rushing over, they find that they have taken the phoenix eggs first, and they are a muggle couple. Let these pure-blood wizards go wild, and finally brutally kill the couple. With the whereabouts of the phoenix eggs unknown, these wizards could only die, trying to find other ways to resurrect their masters, but they still did not give up their pursuit of the phoenix. Knowing that they saw Peter York's information in the Daily Prophet earlier, and noticed that Peter had a phoenix, and guessed that he was the son of the couple they killed in the first place. They want to catch Peter and Phoenix as soon as possible to sacrifice for Voldemort's resurrection, but they both live in Hogwarts Castle with Dumbledore and can't get close. So their goal is on Peter's relatives, especially Peter's Aunt Christine, just to be able to get close to Peter York and find a chance to bring him and Phoenix to Voldemort. Peter didn't hide what he saw from Rosier's mind and told his Aunt Christine that he didn't want her to fall into Rosier's gentle trap. "You have the ability to read minds. Your parents were killed by Rosier and the others. This is impossible." Kristen was full of disbelief. In her eyes, how could Rosier, who was very gentle and considerate in her eyes, be a murderer? You speak out what's in my head now. I believe you. Otherwise I wouldn't believe such absurd things. What you're thinking about now is whether to believe me or not. You're thinking maybe I just don't like Tim, so I choose to talk like this. Peter said directly, looking at Christine. No, this is too simple, it's easy to guess. Christine shook her head and still didn't want to believe it, then thought for a while, then she sank and thought for a moment before asking, do you hear what I'm thinking now? You're not thinking about anything. Instead, there's a lullaby looping in your head. That's the lullaby you used to hum to me. Peter said without hesitation. My God, what the hell did I do? I almost fell in love with the murderer who killed my brother and sister-in-law. Kristen finally believed it, and broke down and covered her face with shame and said. Peter got up and walked over to his aunt and comforted him. You did nothing wrong, Christine. He was originally good at this, and his rhetoric is magical, you can't resist it. Fortunately, you didn't get drunk by him. Otherwise, you will fall in love with him madly and forget who you are. Peter promised me that he wouldn't let them go easily. Kristen raised his head and said through gritted teeth, they killed my brother and sister-in-law. I want them to pay their debts with blood. It's just a pity that I'm just an ordinary person. If I also have magic power, I'll return all the means they used to my brother and sister-in-law back to them. Christine said with regret, but her eyes were still full of hatred. Don't worry, I'll let them pay with blood. Peter assured, and then said to Christine, this is a duel between wizards, Auntie, you should go abroad for a while and wait for the matter here to be resolved. Come back again. It's impossible, Peter, even if you're a wizard, you're only an 11-year-old. How could I leave you and run away? Kristen shook her head, then ran upstairs directly, carrying it on her shoulders. After a while a sniper rifle came down and he said domineeringly, this is your father's favorite collection. I will use this gun to play with them. See if these wizards can stop the power of bullets. If it's a sneak attack, as long as they don't have time to recite the spell, it can hurt them. After all, they are also flesh and blood. Peter said affirmatively. Then let the York family officially declare war on these people. Christine said aggressively, and the aunt and nephew smiled at each other, ready for their arrival. From what Rosier read in his head, these people will raid York Manor tonight, take Peter and Christine, and then threaten Christine's life, summon his phoenix, and get the phoenix's blood. But now that he knows, Peter certainly can't wait to die. He is going to invite you into the urn tonight, and use modern weapons and magic to entertain these uninvited guests. Then he will go to Buckingham Palace for a banquet tomorrow. Since the two aunts and nephews decided to fight against these dark wizards, they had to prepare in advance, so everyone in the manor was given leave in advance. As for Butler Welsh, after hearing about this, he took out a shotgun from the warehouse without saying a word, and vowed to stand with them and avenge the young master. As night approached, Peter took out his wand and kept reciting all protection to the sky, super armor and body protection. They hid their house, as well as their Aunt Christine, who was hiding in the dark, and the housekeeper Welsh protect. Looking at the protective shield with a faint white light around the manor, Peter nodded with satisfaction. This protective spell that cost half of his magic power, even if 10 people attacked together, it would take at least half an hour to break through. And Peter's current magic power, after the blessing of the Phoenix Bloodline, the Bird and Snake Bloodline, and the Boggart, the total magic power has far exceeded that of adult wizards, even if not comparable to Dumbledore, but more than most wizards. This cost him half the protective spell of magical power is difficult for ordinary people to break. At this point, Peter is very grateful to Professor Flitwick for his help. Since joining the Charms Club, Peter has asked Professor Flitwick about the spells in the notebook whenever he has the opportunity. And Professor Flitwick has never kept secrets, and as long as he knows, he will tell him. It made Ravenclaw's students jealous, and they followed one by one, trying to grab all the time and not let him ask. So during this time, Professor Flitwick was in pain and joy. After getting the help of Professor Flitwick, his protective spell ability improved significantly, especially the super armor protection spell that he mastered first and was best at. He was praised by Professor Flitwick, saying that it was almost the same as his level. The members of the former club were not convinced and felt that Professor Flitwick was exaggerating, so they tried to attack Peter's protective spell with their most powerful spells, but they were easily blocked. Even if all the members attacked together in the end, they failed. Break open the tortoise shell-like cover. At the same time, Hawk, a staff member of the Ministry of Magic's Department of Prohibition of Abuse of Magic, also received the content displayed on the magic detection device, and was so frightened that he lost sleep. Run to the boss's office quickly. Lewis, who was still in the office, was about to go home when the door was suddenly opened, and Hawk rushed in, panting and said, "Mr. Lewis, where Peter York is, detection shows that he just used a lot of advanced protective magic. Curse." "What? Advanced protection charm?" Lewis said in surprise. "Are you sure? It's so late, why did he use so many protection charms? Could it be that Peter York was attacked by something? He cast so many protective spells." Hawk guessed carefully. After all, most people don't use so many spells, it's like an emergency. "Wait for now, only the protective spell is displayed, and there are no other spells. I can't be sure if it is an attack. Maybe he is practicing spells," Lewis said, but he still followed Hawk to the detection room and watched the alchemy detection instrument. Before long, when both of them felt that there should be no problem, the instrument began to issue a warning. Hawk looked at the spell displayed on the instrument in horror, and said to his boss with trembling, "Mr. Lewis, the detector just showed that at the same time where Peter York was, a dozen spells were released, and most of them were released. It's all black magic. It is impossible for one person to release more than a dozen different black magics at the same time. This means that there are more than a dozen wizards fighting near Peter York. Are these people crazy, and they use magic without any scruples in the Muggle community?" Lewis also looked at the incantations that kept flashing on the instrument in panic. Almost a lot of it is black magic banned by the Ministry of Magic. "Mr. Lewis, what should we do? Are we going to report it to someone else? But it's already off-duty time, and there aren't many people in the department." Hawk was at a loss. He had never encountered such an emergency before happening. "Nonsense, you should go to the horror department to inform the on-duty staff first, and let them go to the scene to see what's going on," Lewis quickly arranged. "Then, I will go to the minister immediately. I hope there is still time." At the same time, the Battle of York Manor also started. Voldemort's minions, who were not considered Death Eaters, including Rosier, came to 12 people, with hoods and cloaks, and entered York Manor at night. Inside. It's just that they obviously didn't expect the manor's master to be ready. One of the fastest dark wizards was burned to ashes by the protective spell AC/DC. Not even a scream. It scared the other members to stop. Footsteps. A middle-aged wizard at the head saw this situation and found that the house in the manor was protected by a light protective cover. Immediately angrily asked Rosier, who led the way, "Is this what you said is foolproof? They have already prepared. Our plan has been exposed." Seeing that the dark wizards had lost one, Peter smiled with satisfaction. The protection spell is not only for protection. If anyone dares to try to break through the protection boundary, then wait to be burned to ashes like the dark wizard just now. "Boss, what do we do? We can't get in now," one of the dark wizards asked. "What else can we do? Attack. We must catch that little mudblood as soon as possible, and then retreat. This kid has traces of the Ministry of Magic on his body. Now someone should have discovered the situation here, and they must retreat as soon as possible, otherwise it will not be long. The horrors will come." The head of the dark wizard was obviously a clear-headed person, and he anticipated all the situations. Then these wizards began to attack the shield continuously, but after a while, there was no sign of the shield being breached, and some wizards complained helplessly, "How is this protective spell arranged? How is it so strong? Be careful, this little mudblood is only a first year, but he has a lot of tricks. He has already caught both Green and Yaxley, so he cannot be underestimated," the dark wizard reminded him. Peter watched them keep attacking the shield, carefully cast a disillusionment spell, shrinking his body to the size of his little finger, and then went directly behind them, directly becoming one of the dark wizards. Then he strode behind them, and hit one of the dark wizards with a knockback spell directly towards the shield, and the black wizard turned to ashes on the shield. "Phaedrus, what did you do?" the head of the dark wizard asked angrily. He didn't expect Phaedrus to attack his own people. Phaedrus smiled strangely at them and said, "Guess," and then hit the head of the dark wizard with another spell, and then jumped away and disappeared into the jungle on the side. "Boss, Phaedrus betrayed us and escaped." The other dark wizards were dumbfounded, and then asked in disbelief. "Didn't you see it?" the dark wizard said angrily. "Boss, The real Phaedrus walked out of the grass in a daze. He seemed to have been attacked and passed out just now. Just as he was about to speak, he was greeted directly by the Dark Wizard boss, Avada Suo. Bah, betray us and still be so arrogant. The Dark Wizard boss added another black magic in frustration, causing the dead Phaedro to break into pieces again. Peter, who caused all this, was now turning into a beetle, standing on a branch beside him, watching this scene amusingly. This time, 2 more Dark Wizards were killed, and now there are only 9 people left. Just as he was about to move on, he heard a bang of gunshots, shot by the butler, Wales. Then a Dark Wizard made a scream, his body was hit by bullets, and the lungs were hit, and he kept coughing up blood and screaming. It's a Muggle gun. Be careful. The Dark Wizard boss knew so much, he recognized it at once, and took out his wand to save him with a quick healing charm. Boss, I'll come. A young Dark Wizard suddenly walked out from behind and said actively. Okay, Marcel will be handed over to you. I'm responsible for continuing the attack, and I must catch that mudblood and that Muggle and torture them. The house protected by the hood said. Then I'm afraid you won't be able to realize this wish. The young Dark Wizard suddenly said faintly, and then threw the Dark Wizard who was hit by the snatch, a wand on the protective cover, and instantly turned into fly ash. Another unsuspecting Dark Wizard. Hattie, are you crazy too? Why did you betray us? The Dark Wizard boss couldn't believe what happened today, how all of them betrayed them temporarily and attacked them. Hey, guess what? Hattie smiled strangely, dodging the curse of the Dark Wizard boss, turning over a boulder and disappearing. At this time, the real Hardy was lying quietly in the grass not far away, tied tightly by the ropes that the grass turned into, unable to move. After some tossing by Peter, the Dark Wizards changed from the original 12 to the current 8, and one of them was caught by Peter and tied tightly. The other one was hit by Peter's fragmentation charm, and the flesh was ripped open, lying on the ground dripping with blood, screaming constantly. So there are still 6 Dark Wizards left at the scene. But they are already panicking, and in just a little while, their number has been reduced by half. Boss, let's retreat, it's too weird here. A Dark Wizard said in horror. No, we have already promised the Dark Lord, and this time we will succeed in getting the blood of the Phoenix. The Dark Wizard boss gritted his teeth and said, when the Dark Lord is resurrected, that will be our glorious era. Think about it, we pure blood the family will stand on the top of the world. The words of the Dark Wizard boss still worked. The attack power of these people is a bit stronger, and the protective spell has been shaking a little, obviously it can't hold it. After all, this is only a spell cast by Peter alone, even if he paid half of his magic power, barely holding back for so long is already very good. Just keep pushing harder, the protective cover can't hold up anymore. The Dark Wizard boss shouted in surprise. Peter looked at this situation and frowned, and the next time was the most critical time. If he can't get rid of the remaining Dark Wizards as soon as possible, when the protective cover is broken, these Dark Wizards will flood in, and he may not be able to protect Christine and Wales by himself. But apparently he still underestimated his Aunt Christine and Wales, who had just wounded a Dark Wizard with a shotgun. At this time, with a faint sound of gunfire, a Dark Wizard's head exploded like a watermelon. Peter looked back and saw in the corner of the window, Aunt Christine was aiming a sniper rifle at the far Dark Wizards. Well done, Peter complimented. There's only 5 left now. And there's that Rosier among them. The power of a sniper rifle is not comparable to that of a shotgun, let alone a direct shot in the head. The Dark Wizard is completely dead this time, and no magic can save him. What kind of magic is this? Said a Dark Wizard who didn't understand Muggle common sense in horror. The dead wizard just stood beside him, but without warning, he exploded his head and scared him stupid. Quick, use the protection charm. It's a Muggle gun, hold up the protection charm and you'll be fine. The Dark Wizard boss shouted, looking a little flustered. As soon as the words fell, a Dark Wizard was shot in the head. Why are Muggle weapons so powerful? Aren't Muggles very weak? One of the Dark Wizards roared as if their beliefs had collapsed after erecting the shield. Another shot sounded, but this time because of the protective spell, the bullet was firmly blocked in midair and did not hit again. Peter was a little disappointed to see this, but it was enough. Now there are only 4 Dark Wizards left. Now it's his turn. Cloudy, Peter chanted the spell. Once the spell was released, a large amount of cloud and mist poured out of the wand, quickly covering the entire manor. Then Peter quickly turned into a bat, relying on the echo to swiftly avoid obstacles in the thick fog, leaning towards the black wizards. Be careful, that mudblood has come out. Hurry up and seize the opportunity to grab him. The dark wizard boss was alert and full of surprise at the same time. If the target mission has been shrunken in the protective cover like a turtle shell, they will not be able to do anything with him for a while, but if they take the initiative now, it will be easier to handle. Boss, there are only 4 of us left now. Let's withdraw. This Peter York is too powerful, we can't catch it at all. A dark wizard full of fear pleaded bitterly. Yes, boss, they have already killed 8 of us. Now they came out to kill us all. Let's retreat. If we don't leave, the Aurors will also come. Tim Rosier was also full of fear at this time. He was also invited by Christine to come here before, but he never thought it would turn out like this. Most of their members are here. These dark wizards don't really want to work for Voldemort, but they have the same interests, and Voldemort promised them a generous reward afterward, so he was willing to come all the way to England. But if there is no life, what is the reward? But at this time, the dark wizard boss, who was usually the most calm, was like a gambler. He was deeply involved in the game and was unwilling to come out. I am only 1 step away from success, but you let me give up. All cheer me up. As long as we catch Peter York, we can complete the task. At that time, the strongest magic and endless wealth will be at your fingertips. Come on. Whoever says retreat, I'll give him a ride. The remaining 3 were frightened by his fierce eyes, and dared not persuade. Peter's transfiguration skills from Boggart have improved his combat effectiveness a lot, especially in this hidden camouflage sneak attack. He turned into a bat and quickly discovered the dark wizards of these dark wizards. The trail flew to the side, and then turned into a human form again, and directed a cutting spell at one of the dark wizards alone. Ah! The dark wizard screamed and fell to the ground. His hands were cut off with a knife, struggling in pain. Peter picked up his wand and pointed it at him, gouging out the bone. Peter chanted the spell for the first time, the dark magic he had learned from Rosier's head. It was only the first attempt, and it was obviously unsuccessful. Although the dark wizard on the ground was screaming in pain, he was only due to his hands being cut, and the Cruciatus curse did not work on him. Peter carefully recalls the steps of using the Cruciatus, the most important of which is emotions, and requires the caster of the spell to be filled with very extreme negative emotions to be successful. He slowly recalled the scene of the murder of his parents, as well as the dirty thoughts of these people, and a feeling of revenge for wanting these lives to be better than death, welling up from the bottom of his heart. He pointed his wand at the dark wizard on the ground again, and said, gouging out the bone. Ah! This time, the dark wizard on the ground let out an even more painful scream, and his body curled up once, as if he had suffered endless torture. He had forgotten the pain in his hands, and his face was full of pain. Looking at this scene, Peter couldn't help but feel the pleasure of revenge in his heart, and once again chanted the Cruciatus, tormenting the dark wizards, and wanted to repay the pain they used on their parents. It's just that the wand in his hand resisted him a bit, especially when using magic on the original owner. The resistance was even stronger, making it difficult for Peter to use the Cruciatus. Peter reluctantly put away the wand. He knew that he had traces of the Ministry of Magic on his body, so his own wand did not use black magic once, and the most powerful one was torn apart. Common magic forbidden. He is now using the wands of other dark wizards to release black magic. At that time, it can be avoided that the dark wizards did it. After all, the Ministry of Magic can only detect the types of magic that appear near the trace wire, but it is not certain whether it is used by himself. Even if he uses a flashback spell to detect it, his wand will only show that he is not using black magic. Down. Since this wand doesn't work, Peter is going to find another wand. Looking at the weak dark wizard on the ground, and hearing footsteps, Peter did not directly end him. He once again struck a cutting spell, directly cutting off both of his legs, and ran away, and then retreated again into the thick fog. Hearing the news, the other 3 people rushed to see their accomplices who had their limbs amputated on the ground and let out a weak and painful gasp. The dark wizard boss didn't bother to look at his accomplices on the ground, and said irritably, "Get together, don't go away. He wants to destroy us one by one. And quickly get this thick fog away." Otherwise, what will we do? Can't see. The other two dark wizards looked at each other. They only knew some powerful attack magic, and the others had long since forgotten. Rosier remembered a spell. He quickly waved his wand, 050, and a tornado appeared directly, rolling up the surrounding fog, but the movement was a bit loud, and the violent wind made everyone unable to open their eyes. Rosier, did you create this tornado to kill us? Stop it. During the hurricane, the dark wizard boss narrowed his eyes and cursed loudly. Peter turned into a sea swallow at this moment, dancing with the wind, and then looking at the scene below where he couldn't open his eyes. He flew down at the right moment, and instantly changed into the image of another person. Rosier managed to stop the tornado with great difficulty, and when the wind was calm and his eyes opened, the three dark wizards were startled, quickly moved away from their boss, and pointed their wands at him. Because at this time two dark wizards appeared. Boss. Which one of you is the real boss? A dark wizard asked stupidly, obviously frightened by the situation. Idiot, I'm your boss. This is fake. The two dark wizard bosses said in unison, with the same vicious expressions. The three dark wizards were a little dumbfounded. Among them, Rosier was both surprised and wary. He reminded his comrades. This is disguised magus. Peter York is a disguised magus. He has become the appearance of the boss. Let us can't tell. It's easy. We just need to ask questions and we'll know who is our boss, said one of the dark wizards confidently. Then he asked directly, who of you knows how many people I killed when I killed muggles for the first time? Only me and the boss know about this. 6. You killed a family. I was the one who put the finishing touches on you. The two dark wizard bosses answered at the same time. The dark wizard who asked the question was dumbfounded. Only he and the eldest knew about this matter. How could another person know about it now? Peter, disguised as the dark wizard boss, didn't sneer. His mind-reading skills were always open, and the minds of the people at the scene should not try to deceive him. The method of asking questions and guessing people is completely unworkable for him. Rosier, who was on the side, looked at the scene, understood it instantly, and exclaimed that Peter York is a dementor. He can hear what other people think. What kind of monster is he? How can he have so many abilities? A dark wizard felt that he was going crazy, and the magic wand in his hand pointed at the two dark wizard bosses. One of the dark wizards looked at this indistinguishable situation, with a ruthless expression on his face, and suggested, if you can't tell the difference, then kill them all. Otherwise, we will die. When the other two heard the words, their faces showed moving expressions, the wand in their hands no longer shook, and they could shoot a life-threatening spell at any time. Pedro, you dared to kill me. You, the real dark wizard boss yelled angrily. Break to pieces. Peter took advantage of this distraction to cast a spell on the dark wizard who asked the question. Although this spell is a household magic used to mince meat, its power cannot be underestimated. In the final battle, Mrs. Weasley used this magic to kill Bellatrix Lestrange, Voldemort's best go-getter. Peter's attack this time didn't miss. The dark wizard hit by the magic spell shattered into countless pieces like porcelain shattered, burp. However, he also ushered in the most severe attack, and the other three directly attacked him with the strongest magic spell. Peter could only hurriedly erect a few iron armor spells, barely resisting their attacks. Peter York, you are doomed today, the dark wizard boss said excitedly, and kept attacking him with spells. Since you can take the soul, you already know our purpose. The dark wizard boss said with a sneer, and said in a negotiating tone, if you give us the phoenix, we will let you and you go. How is your family? Break to pieces. Peter directly replied with a spell, and then said with hatred, let us go. I'm afraid the first thing you do after you succeed is to kill us. When you killed my parents 6 years ago, there was no point in it, kindness. Kill your parents. Oh, I almost forgot if you didn't say it. The dark wizard boss said with a suddenly remembered expression, I've killed too many muggles, what are you talking about? That couple in the Amazon forest, right, we have to thank them for finding the whereabouts of the phoenix eggs for us, but they didn't know each other, so they sent them away. You shouldn't want to follow in their footsteps. You are so talented, even though you're just a mudblood, I think Lord Dark Lord will definitely reuse you, and then you can get anything you want. Vice for your good expression. Avada kill. Peter took out another captured wand and chanted a spell full of killing intent, only to see a pale green light shot from the wand, rushing towards the dark wizard boss. The speed of light is never something that the human brain can respond to. The killing curse quickly penetrated the protective spell before the dark wizard could react, and directly submerged into his body. The dark wizard boss fell straight down, with a grinning expression on his face, and was already dead. He just never thought that an 11-year-old child would use the death-slaying charm, and it was so powerful. At this time, the scene was silent, and the remaining two dark wizards looked at the children in front of them with horror. "You actually know the life-threatening curse," Rosier uttered a trembling voice. "Thank you for this, I have learned a lot from you. Do you want to taste these spells?" Peter said with a smile, but his eyes were full of murderous intent. "Rosier, don't worry about this, use the killing curse against him," another dark wizard shouted hysterically. In order to ensure the blood of the phoenix, one of them restrained and did not use the killing curse against Peter, but now only the two of them are left, and if they don't use it, they will be the ones who will die. Avada Kedavra, Avada Suo. Peter knew that there was no magic spell that could block the life-suppressing spell, so he turned into a cat and jumped into the grass in advance, dodged the attack of the two life-suppressing spells, and then quickly became smaller and disappeared in the eyes of the two. Is he Merlin reincarnated? The two dark wizards felt like they were going crazy when they saw Peter's transformation into a cat. Since the beginning of their attack, they had found out that he was a natural Dementor and a natural disguise magus. Now it's Animagus again. This can't be described as a freak anymore. "Go, let's go. Can't stay any longer," Rosier shouted to another dark wizard. He felt that if he stayed any longer, he would both die. Another dark wizard also nodded. He felt that it was a mistake to come here today. 12 people came, and now the two of them are still standing completely. It's just that when they first used magic to apparate, they were dumbfounded, because their apparate didn't work at all. "Want to run? It's too late. I've cast an anti-apparition spell around, you guys just stay." Peter's voice drifted around the manor, with an endless chill. Since the Yaxley incident at the Ministry of Magic, Peter has been very concerned about the anti-apparition spell, and even had a good discussion with Professor Flitwick. After all, it is an effective magic that can restrain the apparition of wizards. And this magic is not very difficult to learn. As soon as the two dark wizards heard Peter's words, they were like a battle between beasts. They frantically launched death curses around them, and then tried to escape the range of the anti-apparition curse. Peter watched the actions of the two of them quietly, took out a walkie-talkie and said, "Auntie, it's time to start, Rosier will leave it to you." Received. Christine's voice came through the intercom. On the balcony of the highest floor of the manor, Christine took a sniper rifle and aimed at Rosier among the two who were trying to run to the gate of the manor not far below, and then pulled the trigger. With a bang, Rosier in the distance let out a scream and fell to the ground. I saw that his shoulder was directly torn by the bullet, and blood flowed. Another dark wizard was startled. He quickly erected an iron armor spell to protect himself, and then looked at Rosier, who was weak on the ground, ignored him and ran away quickly. A bat flew down from the night sky and landed next to the injured Rosier. Peter changed back to human form, disarmed Rosier's wand directly, and then held his palm at him. "Please, don't kill me. I'm from the Rosier family. I have a lot of gold galleons, and I can give them to you as long as you don't kill me." Rosier, who was lying on the ground, begged with wide eyes. "Road. Gouging out the bone. Gouging out the bone." Peter tried Cruciatus a few times with Rosier's wand to see if the wand would work for him. "Ah, spare me," Rosier screamed, with blue veins bursting out, his face full of pain, as if every nerve was being tortured endlessly. Soon he couldn't even make a scream, he could only moaning and twitching from time to time, dying. Peter looked at Rosier's wand with satisfaction, not as resistant to his use as the wands he had captured earlier, and even if it was used on his original owner, the power was not weakened in the slightest. Dragon Heartstring Wand. No wonder. This wand has always surrendered to a strong master. I disarmed its master, and now I submit to me, Peter muttered to himself when he heard Rosier's thoughts. After finding the right wand, Peter looked at the useless man on the ground, and in his terrified eyes, he said directly to the walkie-talkie, "Auntie, give him a treat, the Aurors may be coming soon. We can't stay. Live." Christine on the opposite side of the walkie-talkie did not speak, but accompanied by a gunshot. Tim Rosier on the side responded that his head was pierced by a bullet, ending his sinful life. Looking at the person lying on the ground in the distance, the person who was hit by Peter's fragmentation charm has not died. Peter kindly used Rosier's wand and gave him an Avada. After all this is over, only the last wizard who has fled and is approaching the gate of the manor is left. Peter didn't want to let the tiger go back to the mountain. He said directly to the walkie-talkie, "Auntie, the location at the gate is still within the firing range of your sniper rifle. When I fight him later, you will point your gun at his head open. Let these self-proclaimed noble pure-blood wizards feel the power of modern firearms. Don't worry, your aunt and I are the champion of the Chelsea County shooting competition. As long as there isn't that weird shield, I can send him to hell." Christine's confident voice came from the walkie-talkie. Apparently she had recovered. Air. Hearing her answer, Peter turned into a phoenix, instantly disappeared in place, reappeared at the gate of the manor, and fell back to a human form. "Where are you going? I've been preparing for an afternoon to entertain you. You'll make me very angry if you don't give face like this." Avada Kedavra. The dark wizard directly shot a life-threatening spell, and now he just wants to escape from here as soon as possible. Avada Sudden. Peter also directly replied with a life-threatening spell. The two spells collided with each other, making a sizzling sound like molten iron melted, leaving both of them with no time to care about others, so they could only pour their magic power desperately to make their life-suppressing spell more powerful. Peter's magic power is not much left, and the dark wizard is eager to escape, and the killing heart is not strong, so the magic spells connected by the two are in an evenly matched situation. "Peter York, how do you let me go? I'm just an insignificant person. As long as you let me go, I won't show up in front of you again. I believe you will be stronger than the Dark Lord." The dark wizard couldn't break free for a while, bound by the curse. He said in a begging tone, "Hee, when you killed my parents, you should have thought of this outcome." Peter looked at him coldly and said, "Don't force me, otherwise, we will perish together." The dark wizard said with a threatening expression. His expression was full of tension. He was really afraid of this strange child. When Peter York in the form of a phoenix appeared in front of him, he had already given up on the enemy. Everyone in the wizarding world knows that animagus can't be turned into a magical creature. Those who have tried end up turning into new magical creatures like the pentapede, and lose their minds. There is no other way change back. No one has dared to attempt this transfiguration since then. But now he has seen Peter York who can become a phoenix. This made him unable to resist. He thought that only the legendary Merlin could have such an ability. "You can die," Peter said fiercely, and then increased the magic power output, gradually gaining the upper hand on the offensive. "You forced me." The dark wizard gritted his teeth and continued to input magic power, and then he was going to do something. Just with a bang, the black wizard's head was directly blown by the bullets flying from a distance, and fell to the ground with a look of disbelief. At this point, all the dark wizards who come to commit the crime have been eliminated. "And Welsh, it's coming down soon. We need to make a confession before the Ministry of Magic orders come." Forced into the walkie-talkie. It is said that the police in the movies are always late, and the orders of the Ministry of Magic are no less so. The orders arrived only half an hour after Peter had finished fighting. Seeing the chaos in the manor swept by a hurricane, and the signs of being attacked by magic spells everywhere, these orders cautiously held their wands and walked into the manor. "Merlin, what's going on?" An Auror looked in surprise at several corpses that were clearly wizards along the way. Some had broken arms, some were obviously hit by a death curse, some were hit by something, and their flesh was blurred. Rufus Scrimgeour, the head of the Auror's office, also followed this time, mainly because things were too big. The detection device of the Department of Prohibition of Magic Abuse showed that a first-year freshman used more than a dozen spells at the same time. And there is a lot of black magic, and even the death curse. This has attracted the attention of the Ministry of Magic, and hastened to send someone over to see what was going on. The manor was quiet, and the Aurors held their breaths and walked inward cautiously. Until a young voice stopped them. "Are you Aurors? Please don't cross the red line in front of you. I have set all the protection spells and super armor protection spells here. You can't get in." Peter stood in the protective circle and asked. He reminded the Auror outside. When the Aurors heard the voice and looked up, they saw a little boy standing not far away. Looking at the red line mentioned by the little boy, I found that there is a protective cover here that is hardly noticed. Scrimgeour stepped forward and looked at Peter only through the shield, scrutinizing the calm-faced boy. Seriously asked, I'm Rufus Scrimgeour, the head of the Auror's office. The Ministry of Magic prohibition of misuse of magic just now shows that you have used dozens of very dangerous black magic and the unforgivable curse. What the hell is going on here? And why are there so many dead bodies? Peter raised his eyebrows when he heard his name. He remembered the hapless man murdered by Death Eaters the year after Fudge had stepped down as Minister for Magic. Peter waved his wand and lifted the shield. Walking in front of Scrimgeour, he pretended to be surprised and said, Fortunately you are here, these dark wizards attacked my manor at night just now. And keep firing black magic at me, I'm freaking out. Then he said in defense, It's those dark wizards who use black magic and death curses. How could my 11-year-old be able to use such a spell? If you don't believe me, you can check my wand with a flashback charm. Scrimgeour looked suspicious, looking at the boy who was too calm. His expression didn't seem to be frightened. He asked again, Are these corpses what you call the dark wizards? Why did they die here? Do you have any help? A total of 12 dark wizards came here. 3 of the unlucky ones hid my protective spell themselves and were burned to ashes. 1 was hit by my bone shatter spell and turned into pieces. 1 bleeds to death after being hit by my fragmenting charm. Several others were shot by my muggle relatives. As for the remaining few, they killed each other too. Peter recounted the circumstances of all the dead. The surrounding Aurors looked at Peter in disbelief, always feeling like a fantasy. But the surrounding corpses and traces of fierce fighting have told them it was the truth. Suddenly one of the Aurors came up with a bruised face, a big missing nose, and a strong old man with a bright blue fake eyeball. One of his legs was missing, replaced by a prosthetic leg made of wood. He limped forward, staring at Peter with fake blue eyes. Grab Peter's last sentence and ask, Cannibalism. Why are they killing each other? Who are you? Peter looked at his image and guessed his identity. Alistair Moody, former Auror clerk. The strong old man asked, rolling his eerie fake eyes, Answer my question, why are they killing each other? Because of this, Peter said and turned into Moody. In Moody's hoarse voice, I knew I couldn't beat them, so I found the right time to be one of them. Then attack them with a spell, make them fight each other, and fight each other. Oh Merlin, it's disguise magus. The surrounding Aurors looked at each other in amazement, turning into Peter who looked like Moody. He couldn't help but sigh, as the current disguise magus appearing so easily. A disguise magus has just arrived in the department, and now another one has appeared. Well, that's a good reason, Moody said reluctantly. After checking the situation, the Auror staff walked over to the Auror director Scrimgeour and said, The examination has been completed, and there are 12 dead people. Except for those who turned into fly ash, some of them are still wanted. Dark Wizard. There is also a special identity, named Tim Rosier. He is a branch of the Rosier family in France. If the Rosier family knows about this, it may be a big riot at the Ministry of Magic. Scrimgeour nodded, then walked up to Peter with a frown. Said to him, Mr. York, I'm afraid you will follow us back to the Ministry of Magic for questioning. Some of the people here are wizards from abroad, which could cause international problems. I'm afraid not, Mr. Scrimgeour. In addition to my wizarding status, I am also a nobleman in the Muggle world. We have accepted the Queen's invitation to go to the banquet tomorrow. Peter shook his head and refused, then said angrily, I was attacked by dark wizards for no reason in my manor, and I didn't wait for the arrival of the Aurors. Just because these people are foreign wizards, ask me for questions. I will not agree to such an unreasonable request. I'm afraid you have to refuse, Mr. York. After all, a dozen people have died here, and it's very serious. And we just want to ask you, have there been conflicts with these dark wizards? Scrimgeour said firmly, paying no heed to Peter's protest. Then I'm sorry. Peter stepped back and waved his wand in the sky. A barrier with white fluorescence was erected again. He looked at the ugly-looking SK of Lee's Lingia and said, Mr. Director, maybe you really treat me as a 3-year-old child. But I have to tell you that I can keep all these dark wizards here without being frightened by your few words. Peter York, are you trying to do the wrong thing with the Ministry of Magic? You need to know the consequences, said Scrimgeour sternly. I've never heard of victims being brought back for trial as perpetrators. Mr. Scrimgeour, Peter said coldly. I just want you to take you back to ask some questions, not to treat you as a criminal. And it is also to protect you. After all, there may be dark wizards attacking later. Scrimgeour explained, in a good-for-you tone. Really? Then I'm going to reject your kindness, Mr. Director. Peter sneered at the director of the Auror office, and then said murderously. If there are still dark wizards who dare to come, then they will wait for the same fate as the previous 12 wizards. You're fine, Scrimgeour said angrily to the Auror behind him. Peter York refuses to cooperate with the Ministry of Magic investigation, now take me back. The Aurors immediately pointed their wands at Peter. Bang, with the sound of gunshots. Before anyone could react, a bullet hit Scrimgeour 2 inches from his feet, causing him to jump. Who dares to take my nephew back, then taste my bullets? Christine shouted with a sniper rifle. He glared at these wizards and said, I just used this gun to blow the heads of 2 wizards. You can try, a bunch of cowards who only bully children. Muggle lady, this is about the wizarding world. You are not a wizard, please don't get involved in this. Otherwise, if you know too much, we will need to consider erasing your memory. Scrimgeour looked at Christine with the gun, frowned and said, but his words were unconsciously full of contempt. Then my nephew is still His Royal Highness the Earl, who has the right to inherit the royal family. If you want to take him away, please negotiate with the royal family and the government first. Otherwise, no one will want to take him to the Ministry of Magic. Christine responded with a gun. Dow, with a posture that he would shoot if he dared to take a step closer. Upon hearing this, Scrimgeour, who had no knowledge of Muggle society, turned and asked a dark-skinned wizard, Kingsley, do you know of these things that you often have contact with His Muggle Prime Minister? Kingsley Shacklebolt looked at Peter York, who was confronting them, a little surprised by his identity, then nodded and said, as the lady said, because of Peter York's special status, we need to tell the Muggle royal family and the government. Only negotiation can bring him back, otherwise it will easily lead to conflict between the 2 sides. Shacklebolt, you're making too much of a fuss, you're just a Muggle, there's no need to take it too seriously. A young Auror on the side sneered, apparently disapproving of this. Indeed, who doesn't know that Muggles are weak? Do we need to report to them? Mr. Scrimgeour, we don't have to worry about that at all, we'll take the boy's wand first and fix the Muggle lady's memory later. A witch with a blindfold also said. A group of stinky mice who are hiding in the sewers and think they are the best in the world. Kristen roared when he heard that they were going to revise his memory. The guy who hid and was chased and killed by us thought that the world is it yours. Since Peter entered Hogwarts, Christine has learned a lot about wizards through his aristocratic status and connections. The International Secrecy Act for Wizards has only been implemented for less than 100 years, but many noble family trees have a history of hundreds of years. Therefore, in the eyes of the high-level government and many nobles, the group of wizards is not particularly secret information, but there is very little intersection. But there is not much to describe them. You unreasonable Muggle. Described as a stinky rat in the sewers, these Aurors looked unhappy. The one-eyed witch is more angry and points her wand at Christine. You dare to cast a spell on my aunt, and I will send all of you guys to accompany those dark wizards. Peter said coldly, looking at the one-eyed witch like a dead man. The wand in his hand was raised again. If these Aurors dared to take action against their relatives, even if he tried to expose the secret, he would keep these people here. Looks like it's the right time for me to appear. With a puff, Dumbledore appeared directly here. He looked at the confrontation between the 2 sides, and sighed, for the sake of the old man, please put it all down. Wand now. Seeing Dumbledore appear, Peter put down his raised wand and told Aunt Christine to put down the gun too. The Ministry of Magic apparently took Dumbledore very seriously, and put down his wand obediently. Only Scrimgeour looked unhappy, but he put down his wand and said to Dumbledore, Headmaster Dumbledore, you better persuade some of your students. He firmly refuses to go back to the ministry for questioning with us. Interrogation. Did I hear it wrong, Mr. Scrimgeour? Dumbledore looked surprised, as if he had heard something incredible. My students were attacked by dark wizards in their own homes and fought back bravely. Shouldn't they be rewarded? ACDC, why should they be questioned like prisoners? But the problem is that this has already caused the deaths of 12 wizards. This is the biggest death since the Dark Lord disappeared. We have to give a reasonable explanation to the public. Screen under Dumbledore's piercing gaze, Jay coughed uneasily and said, Alistair told me what happened when he called me just now. Dumbledore interrupted. He glanced around, and then looked at Scrimgeour sharply. These dark wizards use a lot of deadly black magic, such as the life-sucking charm. Even the Aurors can't deal with this situation. Peter York's killing them all was a bit too much, but it's not a reason why you can interrogate him at will. Dumbledore defended him so much, which moved Peter a little. Although this old fox was sometimes paranoid and eccentric, at least he was a qualified headmaster. He said directly to Dumbledore, Headmaster, these wizards were following me 6 years ago. They killed my parents just to find the blood of the phoenix. They have found the weak Voldemort in Albania and want to resurrect him whole again through a magical resurrection ritual. When Dumbledore heard Peter's words, he stopped for a moment, then looked at him with a serious look, and asked him solemnly, Peter, are you sure? How did you know the news? That's impossible, the Dark Lord is long gone. This kid is lying, Dumbledore, don't take his word for it. Scrimgeour was horrified, refused to believe the news, pointed to Peter emotionally and said, he just wanted to divert our attention. The phoenix blood and resurrection magic were all made up by him. Peter looked at Scrimgeour's hysterical expression, smiled sarcastically, and then said to Dumbledore with a mysterious smile, I see it in his head now, and when he's about to go back, he's going to tell me what I say is false. And I was thinking of finding a newspaper in the Daily Prophet, describing me as a lunatic who gradually became arrogant after receiving the Merlin Medal, and killed the surrendered Dark Wizard. Dumbledore understood what he meant as soon as he heard it, looked at Peter in surprise and said, I didn't expect you to have such a talent. It is indeed a very useful skill. It's a very painful thing just to be in touch with other people's thoughts every moment. I once met a woman who had the same talent. Only this can make her very painful, and even make her very sensitive, and she almost did something that she regretted. Are you prepared for this? Headmaster, you're talking about Queenie Goldstein, wife and sister of that Newt Scamander. Peter said with a smile, and then he said with a relaxed expression. I'm a little different from her. My ability is controllable, and I can choose when I want to hear it and when I don't want to hear it. Then you are indeed very lucky. Dumbledore said in surprise. Scrimgeour heard Peter say what he was thinking, and exclaimed with a look of alertness, you are a Dementor. The Ministry of Magic prohibits wizards from using this spell, and you are violating this prohibition. Peter was too lazy to deal with this idiot. No wonder he was a short-lived minister who was killed by Death Eaters not long after he came to power. He still looked at Dumbledore and asked, Headmaster, will Hogwarts fire me for killing 12 dark wizards today? If so, then I'll be early, get ready. As for the Ministry of Magic, if it wants to get in trouble, I would consider seeking help from the Muggle government and the royal family. You didn't make any mistakes today. Just remember, Peter, don't let yourself fall into hatred and killing. It will slowly corrode your heart and make you no longer like yourself. Dumbledore looked at this gently, only the little boy who reached his waist, said meaningfully. Do you know why many wise great magicians are reluctant to be in constant contact with black magic, especially the unforgivable curse? It is because these spells require extreme negative emotions to use. When a person is in negative emotions all year round, his personality will change. Become irritable, have no feelings for life, and eventually lose people's emotions. This is very scary. You are no longer you then. So even those who study black magic will be very careful to avoid falling into such emotions for a long time, which is also the source of the unforgivable curse. Peter was a little surprised when he heard this theory, but at the same time he also realized that Dumbledore was reminding himself that he had found himself using the unforgivable charm. When he used the death curse and the Cruciatus curse, he needed to be in a state of extreme hatred and revenge at all times in order to be able to exert the greatest power of these two spells, otherwise it would only make people bleed at most. But he had only used the death-sucking charm and the Cruciatus charm a few times, and he clearly sensed the desire for destruction in his heart, and it quietly increased a lot. Especially in the confrontation with the Aurors just now, according to his past personality, he is more likely to find various means to avoid conflicts, rather than being directly rigid like just now. Obviously, it is the sequelae of the use of black magic. No wonder those Death Eaters in Voldemort looked gloomy and grumpy. These Death Eaters are best at black magic. They have been in the negative emotions of black magic for a long time, and it is difficult to change. Peter, would you like to give me your wand? Dumbledore said gently to Peter. We'll use the flashback charm to go back to the magic you used before, so we can prove whether you used black magic. Of course, please use it. Peter smiled and handed him the wand. Dumbledore turned to Scrimgeour and said, Mr. Chief, please come here, and the Aurors as witnesses. Let's go back to the magic of Peter York on the spot, so we can prove that he didn't break the laws of the Ministry of Magic. When the crowd gathered, Dumbledore held Peter's wand high and cast a flashback spell. For a while, cutting spells, bone-crushing spells, and a lot of advanced protection spells were traced back from the wand. There is no black magic. Seeing this situation, Scrimgeour instinctively asked, the spells you use are all household magic cutting spells and bone-shattering spells, so how did you defeat those dark wizards? Household magic is pretty good too. At least I've cut off quite a few dark wizards' arms with a cutting spell, so they can't get their wands. Didn't you see that the corpses of those dark wizards were all broken arms and legs? That was the result of the cutting spell. There is also the body-shattering, bone-shattering curse. Those of you who only found pieces of the black wizard with the forehead were the result of hitting them with this magic spell, and the effect is quite good. Peter described sarcastically, as if he was discussing killing chickens and pigs, without the slightest pressure. Listening to his description, the Aurors unconsciously covered their hands, always feeling cold. Especially after hearing the effect of the bone-shattering curse, I felt uncomfortable everywhere, and looked at Peter's eyes with more and more awe. Dumbledore watched Peter's deliberate narration. The corners of his mouth twitched constantly. He always felt that this kid was too bad. Since there is no problem with seeing my wand, can you please leave? Peter said, squinting at Scrimgeour. In our Muggle playbook the cops always come last, but I see the Aurors as well. I've wiped out the dark wizards for over half an hour, and the Aurors are long overdue. He also questioned me with the attitude of treating a prisoner. Scrimgeour was trembling with anger, and shy of Dumbledore's presence, he shook his hand fiercely. Turning around and shouting loudly, let's go back. Wait, Peter said, then pointed to several corpses in the manor, and said, you take away the corpses of these dark wizards, I don't want them to contaminate my manor. Since Mr. York is so powerful, why doesn't he handle these things himself? Why bother us weak Aurors? Scrimgeour said strangely. If this doesn't work with you, then what are the Aurors doing? Peter sneered unceremoniously. Otherwise I'll hand the body over to the Muggle police tomorrow, and then I won't care about my business. Bring back all the corpses. Scrimgeour ordered to his subordinates, holding back his anger. Bring back those shards of powder too. Peter said again. I can help this old man. Dumbledore looked at the smell of gunpowder between the Auror and Peter, and hurriedly interjected. Immediately he used the old wand to empty a little, and those things that were shattered into countless pieces by the shattering curse gathered again and became a complete corpse. As for those that were burned into fly ashes, the fly ashes were also brought together. Looking at this scene, Peter was amazed at Dumbledore's fine control of magic and the power of the Elder Wand. Almost at the same time, the landscape trees and walls in the manor that were damaged by the spell were repaired and became newer than before. The Aurors apparated out of the place, under the watchful eye of Dumbledore and Peter, carrying the dark wizard's belongings. As for the uneven number of wands, Peter denies that he is keeping the wands, saying that he accidentally destroyed them during the battle. As for whether they believe it or not, that's not Peter's question. Headmaster, thank you for your help today. If it weren't for your presence, I'm afraid I don't know what it would have been like. Peter said gratefully, and then invited him in. Please come in for something to eat. No, little guy, your affairs are a bit big today, and there will be more problems in the future. I hope you are mentally prepared. Dumbledore shook his head and refused his invitation. I'll keep an eye out, Headmaster Dumbledore. Peter nodded. Well, I'll go back first. I was just at home wearing my pajamas and preparing to wait for tomorrow, when I was quarreled by your affairs. Now it's time to go back and rest, said Dumbledore, and disappeared into the manor in the blink of an eye. Your principal looks pretty good. He was very protective of you just now. Christine said. Indeed, it's annoying at times. But there's no denying that he's a good guy. And a good guy with a lot of power, Peter said with a smile. Chapter 131. York Manor experienced a thrilling attack, but the next morning, everything was the same. Peter and the three seemed to have never experienced this, busy preparing for the Queen's Christmas banquet in the evening. Of course there was the Christmas present, besides the better friends at school, the professors, and Dumbledore, who had helped him last night, and gifts for the royals at the banquet tonight. Throughout the day, Peter was constantly changed by his Aunt Christine. She prepared a lot of custom-made dresses for Peter in advance, and decided to let him surprise everyone at the royal banquet. Christine, I'm a boy, and I'm only an 11-year-old child. I don't need to surprise anyone. Peter was tossed by his aunt for a long time, and finally said helplessly, and this is the Queen's banquet, so we can't overwhelm the guest. Good. What's wrong? You are the 050, little Earl of our York family, it's time for them to take a good look. Christine said indifferently, then pulled him to the mirror and looked at him. This white suit dress showed a satisfied look. This is not bad, it makes our little Peter look like an angel who has fallen into the world. It's much more handsome than Prince William boasted by the media. He is a prince, and he will be a king in the future. You can't compare it with me, Peter said helplessly. The York family has a constant relationship with the current royal family. The York family once had a king, and Peter even called the Queen an aunt, but since Peter's grandparents passed away, there has been little contact between the two families. Shout, he wants to be king for another 50 years. I think the Queen looks tough now, and I'm afraid he can live for another few decades. Then it's his father Charles's turn, Christine said jokingly. Peter laughed when he heard that. The Queen was very tough, and he was still sitting on the throne when he died in his last life, when his son was already an old man in his 70s. I heard something from some nobles earlier. I heard that Charles and Diana have been separated for a long time. Both have their own lovers. If it wasn't for the Queen's suppression, I'm afraid they would have divorced. Said with a gossip face. Really, Peter was a little surprised, but thinking about the ending of their divorce later, he also thought it was reasonable. There are few members of the royal family who can have perfect love, and many times they are mixed with political interests. In the afternoon, Peter and his Aunt Christine took a special car to Buckingham Palace. The banquet venue was resplendent, and many invited people gathered together, dressed in luxurious dresses, holding champagne and smiling. The arrival of Peter and Christine caused a little commotion. After all, the York family has not been seen in public for a long time. In particular, Peter York, who inherited the title at a young age, once showed intelligence and eagerness to learn. But in the past 2 years, it has quietly disappeared, allowing people from the outside world to guess whether the little Earl is not in the crowd, so he did not dare to come out to meet people. But looking at it now, it has overturned their guesses. The handsome 11-year-old boy in front of him is like a little prince in a fairy tale. His eyes are full of wisdom, which makes people not dare to underestimate him. Wow, Christine, no wonder you hid your nephew so deeply. If I had such a good-looking child, I would hide it every day as a treasure. A chubby woman in a blue dress came over, took Christine's arm cordially, looked at Peter in amazement and said, "By the way, I'm your aunt's good friend, Mary Westminster, the handsome little Duke of York." The fat girl introduced herself to Peter with a smile. "Hello, Miss Westminster, nice to meet you." Peter took the initiative to hold Mary's hand and said politely, "Just call me Mary, Peter. When you were born, I hugged you." Mary Westminster said kindly, then kept holding Peter's hand, smiling and not letting go. "Okay Mary, put away your nympho look. This is my nephew, only 11 years old. It's not what you can imagine." Christine helplessly rescued Peter from Mary's clutches. "It's okay, I can wait another 7 years. Right, little Peter, you must be a very handsome man when you grow up. Then you must consider me, hee hee." Mary continued to tease Peter. Looking at his helpless look, he smiled even more happily. "Mary, do you know why the Queen asked Peter to come to the banquet?" Christine asked Mary, the gossip channel in this noble lady, trying to know the reason. "I don't know, there was no sign before. The Queen announced the invitation list directly, and specifically asked Peter York to come to the banquet." Mary also shook her head to show she didn't understand. Not long after, the Queen appeared in the banquet hall with members of the royal family, and everyone saluted. After announcing the start of the banquet, with the sound of music, the crown prince and princess acted as the opening dancers, and adult men and women danced elegantly. Many people present can see that the relationship between the crown prince and the princess is very cold. In the whole dance, there is not even a single dialogue or a single smile. It seems that the end of the marriage has been reached. Halfway through the banquet, Peter was informed that the queen wanted to see him. Following the guide, Peter came to the queen and saluted, "Your Majesty, it's an honor to meet you. Please sit down, little Peter. In private, you can call me Auntie," the old queen said to him kindly. The queen looked at Peter's appearance carefully, and said with admiration, "What a very handsome little gentleman. You are now in the first year of Hogwarts. How is the situation there? Are you still adapting?" Peter raised his head in surprise and looked at the gracious queen. "You are surprised. Why do I know about Hogwarts?" The queen looked at his surprised expression and said with a smile. Peter nodded. Actually, before modern times, many royal families in Europe had close relations with wizards. Wizards would become advisors to the royal family and nobles, so they had a better understanding of wizards. It was only with the hiding of the wizards that he became a legendary figure. Even I thought it was just made up, and it wasn't until I took the throne that I found out that there are still wizards in England. The queen explained. "Your Majesty, how did you know that I'm a wizard? My aunt and the others knew about my study at Hogwarts. But they didn't tell anyone else. They shouldn't know," Peter asked suspiciously. "Actually, when you entered school, your wizard's Ministry of Magic already notified the Prime Minister about this. After all, you are one of the heirs to the British throne and need special treatment." The queen looked at him gently. "The right to inherit the throne has already been ranked behind the 50th. Who is one of the heirs?" Peter said silently. "And the reason why I am looking for you today is to give you a magic book that has been passed down in the royal family for a long time. After all, you are the only wizard in the royal bloodline for hundreds of years. I am afraid that only you can use it," the queen said to him mysteriously. "Magic books? Isn't the royal family always ordinary people? How can there be magic books?" Peter asked, very puzzled. "You should know the story of Merlin and King Arthur," the queen asked. Peter nodded. "This story in all England, I am afraid not a child does not know. Especially in the magic world, it has become a belief. This magic book in the royal family's collection is said to have been written by Merlin," the queen said amazingly, shocking Peter. "Your Majesty, the magic book you're talking about was written by Merlin. Are you sure it's true?" Peter asked in surprise. "Merlin's magic book does not exist in the magic world, and there is no reason for it to appear in the Muggle world. Moreover, the current royal family, the history of which is not as long as some nobles, how can there be Merlin's books?" Peter guessed that it may be a magic book from hundreds of years ago, which was accidentally collected by the royal family, and then passed around and became Merlin's book. The banquet was very lively, with laughter and laughter everywhere. Peter left with the queen, who had exited under the watchful eyes of everyone, making many nobles present envious. The queen personally took Peter to the private library in the palace, and then in a dark compartment, solemnly took out a dark yellow heavy book. The queen handed the book to Peter and said with anticipation, "This book seems to have thoughts, and people can often hear its whispers, but seems to be glued together and cannot be opened. And the cover is very hard, can't be damaged by the sharpest knife, and will bounce back." When Peter heard it, he immediately became interested. According to the queen, this magic book has been collected by the royal family for hundreds of years. If it was just a simple magic, I am afraid it would have expired long ago. But now it is still able to rebound damage, and there are whispers, which shows that this is not an ordinary magic book. He took the magic book, and as soon as his hand touched the book cover, the complex patterns on it came alive and began to intertwine with each other, and then formed the 4 characters of the Book of Merlin. When I touched the material of this book, it was obviously not parchment paper, but rather similar to the material of dragon skin, but thicker than dragon skin. It seems that it still belongs to you. We have been in contact for so long, and this book has never changed," the queen said in surprise when she saw the change in the magic book. Peter didn't hide in front of the queen. He directly took out his wand and read, "Show yourself," to the magic book, but the magic book did not change. "Maybe you can open it up and take a look," the queen said expectantly from the side, like an old child, full of curiosity about this magical thing. Your Majesty, in order to keep magic books secret, wizards often cast evil spells on books. Especially such a magic book that is hundreds of years old. If it is not checked in advance, there may be serious consequences. Peter explained Road. Then he opened the magic book vigilantly with his wand, and set a protective spell for himself and the queen in advance before touching the magic book. After several inspections, he found that there was no problem before he went to touch the magic book. Opening the magic book, Peter thought that there would be magic knowledge or something, but the book was blank. Only on the first page of the book, there was a sentence, "Wizards are gods." What a big breath. Wizards are gods. Is this really Merlin's book? Do you think wizards are gods? The queen frowned when she saw that line of words, and then she was no longer interested. Little Peter, this book is handed over to you. Magic books can only be used by wizards, and we don't need them. It's a waste to put them here. The queen said with emotion. He looked at Peter and couldn't help but reach out and touch it. Touching Peter's head, for hundreds of years, the royal family has been hoping that there will be a wizard with magical qualifications, and then unlock this magic book, and now the task is completed. Thank you, Your Majesty, I am very interested in this magic book. Peter saluted the queen with the magic book, and said gratefully. Although this magic book did not reveal the authenticity, and it started with a seemingly arrogant sentence, "Wizards are gods," but he could feel the rich magic fluctuations from the magic book, which showed that this book was extraordinary, only it's not unraveled yet. Chatted with the queen for a while, and under her introduction, met other members of the royal family, as well as the princess who was later known as the British Rose. In return for the magic book, Peter gave the queen a quill made of phoenix feathers. When she knew that it was a phoenix feather, the queen looked at this very beautiful quill in surprise and put it into her collection with great care. Phoenix, this is a legendary fetish, nothing is more precious than him. Rejecting his Aunt Christine, who wanted to send him back, and let her continue to play with friends here, Peter took a special car back to York Manor. As soon as he got home, Peter couldn't wait to take out the magic book and carefully observe the book, trying to find its correct usage. Although Merlin's book was written on the bookcase, he didn't know if it really belonged to Merlin's magic book. Wizards are gods. Peter looked at this sentence repeatedly. When he first saw this sentence, he also reacted like a queen, thinking that the original owner of this magic book was too arrogant, but now thinking about it slowly, he thinks it might be I misunderstood, this sentence is not taken literally. What is a god? In the book of Genesis, God said that if there is light, there will be light. God said that if there are all things, there will be all things. As for the wizards, although the magic of the wizards is all kinds of strange, each has its own purpose, and even requires different spell-casting steps, but the most important point is always the strongest will. The will determines the reality. Hogwarts professors, when teaching their students, have always emphasized the most important point is to make students firmly believe that if they can succeed, magic can be realized. Many wizards think that the pronunciation of spells is important when using magic. But in fact, wizards don't need to utter a spell when they are at their most emotional, like a magical explosion or a more profound silent spellcasting. And the languages of different countries are different, but wizards can cast spells with the same effect under different pronunciation conditions, which shows that the spell is only an auxiliary function. In Peter's understanding, the magic of Harry Potter's world is actually more of a power that can make things happen. Because the successful release of many magics requires strong emotional support. It is to be confident that you can succeed. Other spells and gestures are only used as auxiliary means, not the decisive factor. And at this point, the power to achieve what you want is very similar to the legendary gods. It's just that the wizards do not have the mighty power of gods. He touched the magic book, put his wand under the first page of the magic book, "Wizards are gods," and wrote a sentence with magic power, "Wish it all." This is his answer, used to answer the words above. I saw that in the blank space on the magic book, a large number of text patterns gradually emerged. The words, "Wizards are gods," on the first page gradually disappeared, and another sentence appeared again. Merlin Ambrosius at your service, young wizard. Seeing the handwriting displayed on the Book of Merlin, Peter asked cautiously and curiously, "You said you were Merlin Ambrosius, what evidence do you have?" "Actually, I'm not the real Merlin. I'm just a memory of Merlin. He put his memory into this magic book and used alchemy to give this magic book life. The answer was displayed on Merlin's book. A memory, Peter sneered and said. I also read your words in another diary. It's just that that diary is actually a Horcrux. Boy, don't compare an alchemy life like me with a Horcrux. That's an insult to me. The handwriting displayed on Merlin's book is rather sloppy, and he replied angrily. You are too cautious, you don't look like an 11 or 12-year-old child at all. Wait for our teacher to tell me, never trust a thinking thing unless you can find where his brain is hiding. Peter replied calmly. Your teacher is right, but I'm different. I'm an alchemy being created by Merlin. It won't harm anyone. The Book of Merlin explained as best he could. You said that you were made by Merlin, is there any evidence? Merlin is a character from more than 1,000 years ago. How could his magic book end up in the Muggle royal family? Peter expressed disbelief. Boy, believe it or not. If it wasn't for you, I was the first wizard I contacted. I'm too lazy to answer so many questions from you. Do you have any other questions? If not, just close me. The handwriting on the book was very scribbled, as if he didn't want to talk to him more. Since you are a magic book, what knowledge do you have to teach me? He forced him to directly ask the question he was most concerned about. Ha, sly little brat. Finally the question you want to ask. The Book of Merlin was very proud. I have recorded the elemental magic that Merlin is best at. That is the magic that many wizards dream of. Elemental magic, what is that? Peter asked curiously when he heard of this kind of magic for the first time. Shout, the current magical world is really degenerate. The Book of Merlin said mockingly, explaining it at random. Elemental magic refers to the 4 elements of earth, water, wind and fire, which are the basic elements that make up all things in the world. By communicating elements, wizards can exert the power to destroy the world. Otherwise, if you only rely on that little magic power in your body, you can play tricks and forget about the rest. Is elemental magic so powerful? Then why am I in the magic world? Never heard of it, Peter asked suspiciously. Because you want to successfully learn elemental magic, you need a very high level of talent. To a large extent, this has blocked the footsteps of most wizards. And even if you learn elemental magic, if you don't master it well, your power is not as good as that of ordinary wizards. So elemental magic is gradually eliminated, replied the Book of Merlin. Then do you think I am qualified to learn elemental magic? If I didn't, would I still tell you so much, kid? The Book of Merlin opened a page by himself, and a somewhat complicated symbol appeared. In the future, try to keep this symbol in your mind as soon as possible. Then use the magic in your body to continue to outline this symbol until it is all constructed. At that time, I will teach you how to continue. Remember, did it? What does this symbol mean? What does it do? Peter asked curiously. Although this Book of Merlin, it was firmly made by Merlin. But Peter, who has always been cautious and suspicious, will never rush to do what he asks until he understands it. Does the ghost know that this magic book will absorb its own vitality like Tom Riddle's diary? The most important step in elemental magic is meditation. The Book of Merlin replied, and further explained. This symbol is a rune that symbolizes communication. You need to engrave this symbol in your mind through meditation, and use the magic in your body to continuously describe it. Only when the magic in the body can communicate with the elements outside can you step into the elements. The magician's domain. Knowing how the symbols work, Peter closed the Book of Merlin and locked it in the locker. He will not try it until he fully understands whether the book is harmful to him. After school starts, he can take this symbol and ask Professor Rune, or Dumbledore. He should be able to know the answer. As for now, Peter looked at the packaged gifts and summoned Phoenix Field. These were gifts from Peter to friends, like the most playful twins, and Peter sent them a large package of products from Zorko's Magic Joke Shop. Professor Snape's gift was a vial of Field's tears, plus a Chinese-English book of Chinese medicine. Maybe Professor Snape can get the inspiration for the potion from the book of traditional Chinese medicine. As for Alan and Cedric, he directly gave them a large bag of Honey Duke's candy. For Professor Flitwick, who gave him a lot of help, Peter specially customized a set of exquisite dragon skin dueling suits for him, which cost him 100 gold galleons. Dumbledore's words reminded him of what he had said to Harry Potter, and wanted a pair of wool socks. So Peter directly sent dozens of pairs of wool socks, enough to get him through the winter. Other professors, Peter also prepared corresponding gifts. After negotiating with Field for a long time, Peter finally exchanged 10 packets of nuts in exchange for Field as a messenger to send these gifts to the corresponding friends. Early the next morning, Peter was woken up by Christine. "Get up, Peter. There's a whole bunch of owls coming straight to our manor this morning, and it's going to be a disaster." "Owl, it's supposed to be a Christmas present." Peter yawned as he slowly got up and said. "Wait until Peter washes completely and goes downstairs." He was surprised to see that the Christmas tree was full of gifts, and it had become a hill. Backquote, "Merry Christmas, Peter." Aunt Christine said to him with a smile, "Looks like you're very popular at school. It almost freaked me out when all those owls came in full force." Saying that, Christine handed the gift box in his hand to Peter. "This is my Christmas present for you, you have to be the first to open it." Peter opened the box curiously, and there was a brooch inlaid with emeralds, which was very gorgeous and beautiful. "This was given to me by your mother, and I am now passing it on to you. I hope you will be healthy and happy in the future," Christine said softly. "Thank you, Auntie." Peter stepped forward and hugged Kristen. "I love this gift. It's very memorable." Then the pen. Then Peter took out a bottle of magic potion that glowed with fans' fluorescence and handed it to Christine. "This is a beautiful potion, which can make people radiant for a period of time. I specially asked our dean, Professor Snape, to do it. Come out, he is a master of potions, and the quality of the potions is the best." Christine heard it, but took the potion very happily. Women's pursuit of beauty is no less than of Lee's Sniffles' desire for shiny things. In order to get Professor Snape to agree to make a beauty potion, Peter managed to get the potion at the cost of a bottle of Phoenix Tears after being criticized. Peter came to the mountain of gifts and picked some random gifts to look at. I found that there are many gifts from classmates who do not have many intersections, and most of them are girls. It took Peter an early morning to finally sort the gifts and find out what a few friends had sent. Among them, the Weasley twins sent a brand new set of wizard chess. Both Cedric and Alan sent a magic book and a. Among the professor's gifts, Professor Snape sent a copy of his potions notebook, but it was not the potions textbook that recorded the spell. As if making an appointment, Professor McGonagall and Professor Flitwick both sent their notes from school. In the end, the gift that Dumbledore sent was the most simple but not simple, because the gift was just a piece of parchment. But it recorded the Patronus charm and the technique of using the Patronus charm to pass the message. The happy days passed so quickly that the Christmas holidays were over before I could react. Peter was sitting on the Hogwarts Express, watching the students who were reluctant to part with their parents on platform 9 1/4 3. When he saw the red-haired Weasley, who hurried over, Peter quickly stuck his head out of the car and shouted at the twins, "George, Fred, this way." The two heard Peter's voice, waved their hands at him with a smile, and then boarded the train where he was. "George, Fred, how was your holiday?" Peter asked with a smile to the two who had just entered the door. "It's not bad, our brother Bill came back from Egypt and brought us a lot of stuff there," George said cheerfully. "When we left, we also took the shroud of an Egyptian pharaoh, which is said to be able to exorcism. Do you want to see it?" "Thank you, I'm not interested," Peter said speechlessly. "It's a pity, then let's sell him to our roommate Lee Jordan. He has been unlucky recently, and just used a shroud to ward off evil spirits." Fred said with a smile that you missed something good. "By the way, something to show you." Fred took out a dingy briquettes with a smug look and put them on the table. "This is the result of our holiday. Speaking of which, thank you for your Christmas gift, gave a great inspiration to us." "Well, what is this?" "Food," Peter asked in confusion, looking at the briquettes-like thing on the table. "This is big shit. We dismantled those Joko products you gave us, and it took a few days of hard work to get it out. Just hit the ground hard, the smell of big shit will come out, and no one can keep it." "Can bear it," said the two brothers proudly. When Peter heard this, he hurried away from the things on the table and looked at the two brothers with disgust. "What kind of mentality do you have to think about making big shit? Aren't you afraid of killing people? Hey, when we're ready to go back to school, we'll throw a few at Filch's office. Let him have a taste. Save him staring at us all day long," Fred said viciously. "After catching us earlier, he actually let us wash the chamber pot overnight." That smell made us not want to eat for 2 days. George's expression was indescribable. So since then, we've vowed to look good on this old guy. We're officially declaring war on Filch. The twins said in unison. Peter was speechless for a moment. Why did the two brothers fight Filch? Peter, you're in this AC/DC. Cedric and I are in a car, and I thought you missed this train. Alan pushed open the car door and walked in, and said in surprise. Cedric Diggory followed behind. The five of them finally got together, locked the door of the compartment, and chatted about the latest things together. I'll tell you about a big event that happened before Christmas. Alan recounted with gossip and exaggeration. My dad said that the Aurors of the Ministry of Magic recently dealt with a very terrifying thing. It is said that more than a dozen dark wizards attacked a wizard's manor. As a result, he was counter-killed by this wizard and directly killed all the dark wizards. When the Aurors arrived, there were stumps and broken arms everywhere, which was terrifying. Not knowing what happened later, the Aurors did not bring the wizard back to the Ministry of Magic, but only brought back the corpses of the dark wizards. Really? Why didn't you hear what my father said? The twins were full of surprise, and then said with admiration, I really want to see this ruthless man, who actually killed all the dozen or so dark wizards. Really? Amazing. Peter looked strange on the side. He didn't expect to talk about himself. It seems that the next time may not be calm. Peter, why don't you speak? What do you think about this? You said the person who killed the dark wizard. What will happen next? It shouldn't matter. After all, he is fighting back. There are 12 dark wizards on the other side. If he didn't kill him with one blow, he would probably be the one who died. Peter said lightly. I think so too. That's more than a dozen dark wizards. If there is no means, I am afraid that the worst is the wizard. Alan nodded in agreement, and then responded, Oh, Peter, how do you know it's 12? Do you have any special news? I just saw that you didn't respond. Tell us about it. Dong dong dong, the movement on the window interrupted Alan's words. There was an owl outside the window, and it was flying and knocking on the window glass with its mouth. Cedric, who was beside him, quickly opened the window so that the owl could fly in. After the owl threw a stack of newspapers on the table, it flew out of the window again. It's the Daily Prophet. Let's see what's new. Alan picked up the newspaper and read it, then widened his eyes and wiped his eyes in disbelief. Then he raised his head and looked at Peter with a complicated expression. What's the matter? Why are you looking at me like that? Peter asked in confusion when he saw Alan's eyes. Peter, the newspaper said you killed 12 dark wizards. Is that true? The wizard I said just now is you. Alan said dryly. Show me. Peter didn't answer his words, but brought the newspaper to read. It is reported that on the night of December 23rd, an unbelievable terrorist attack occurred at the York estate in Sloane Square, Chelsea County. 12 dark wizards broke into the manor at night and fought fiercely with Peter York, the owner of the manor. Peter York, who was only 11 years old, with his calm mind and meticulous means, successfully killed all 12 dark wizards. Killed and protected his Muggle family and his own life. But the Aurors arrived only half an hour later. Among them, Scrimgeour, the director of the Auror department, not only failed to comfort the frightened 11-year-old. Instead, he questioned the victim with the attitude of interrogating the prisoner, and took the victim back for questioning. This made the reporter wonder, is it possible that in the future when the dark wizard breaks into our home, we can't fight back, but wait for it? According to the information obtained by the reporter from the Ministry of Magic's prohibition of the abuse of magic, in this attack, the dark wizards used dozens of black magic, and there were many unforgivable curses. And our victim, in the subsequent wand check, used only normal and common magic, and did not violate the laws of the Ministry of Magic. The Aurors want to arrest the dark wizard on the grounds that the victim killed him. The reporter wanted to ask, do Aurors exist to protect us or to protect criminals? Reporter Rita Skeeter reports for you. After reading this report, Peter was a little bit dumbfounded. This Rita Skeeter was really well informed and worried about herself, so she chose to stand on Peter's side and targeted the Auror department. With Rita Skeeter's writing skills, the Aurors will probably be criticized this time. After reading the newspaper, Peter looked up and found that the car was quiet, everyone was looking straight at him, and when he looked at them, he quickly turned his eyes away, daring not to meet him. Why, knowing that I killed 12 dark wizards, so scared of me? Peter asked with a smile. How is that possible? Alan said with a stock of his neck. I'm just a little surprised that you were able to kill all 12 dark wizards, it's amazing. Those Aurors can't do such a thing. Yes, those dark wizards are bad people. They use the unforgivable curse, which is too abhorrent, and they deserve it. What's the situation? Peter turned to Cedric, who had been silent, and asked, don't you think I should kill those dark wizards? No, I was just wondering why these dark wizards attacked you. Cedric shook his head and explained quickly. Hearing Cedric's answer, Peter showed a sincere smile. If they don't agree with each other now, they may only be nodding friends in the future. These dark wizards have actually been tracking me for 5 or 6 years, and their purpose is my phoenix field. And they are the real murderers of my parents. So between me and them, either you die or I die. Peter, he said with a smile, but it made the few people present not only chill. Their purpose is the phoenix. Although the phoenix is very precious, they shouldn't be allowed to work so hard, right? Cedric couldn't help asking. Peter gave him an approving look, and the future Prince Hufflepuff had begun a little sign. Peter looked at the crowd and said, they actually need the blood of the phoenix. Use the blood of the phoenix to activate a resurrection magic. Go resurrect a person. Resurrection. Who is resurrected? Several people asked in unison. I don't know if you'll believe it, but Auror Director Scrimgeour thinks I'm talking nonsense. Peter looked at several classmates and said seriously. I learned from these dark wizards that the mysterious man in the wizarding world is not actually dead. He is still hiding in the Albanian forest, lingering on. These dark wizards were lured by him and wanted to resurrect him with the blood of the phoenix. Let him come back. Hey, Merlin's stinky socks. Several people took a deep breath and looked terrified. Peter, are you sure? Are those dark wizards lying? Alan asked with a pale face. No one could calm down when he heard the news that the terrifying black demon was still alive. They're not really panicking, because I heard it with Dementor, so the news is true. And Dumbledore knows about it. Peter said affirmatively. With Dumbledore here, even if the Dark Lord reappears, we don't need to worry too much, he will protect us. We must know that we are in the safest Hogwarts. When Fred heard Dumbledore, he was very firm ground support. Okay, let's leave these things to the adults. We are just a group of 11-year-old children, and the sky can't stand up to us. George comforted and said, and then angrily handed the big dung ball to Alan and Cedric. It took me and Fred a few days to make this, you see, the effect is very good. Is it chocolate? I'll try it. Alan also tried to forget what he heard just now, so he should pick up the big dung egg, and seeing its gray appearance, he thought it was chocolate made by the twins. Gotta taste it. Don't eat it. That's big shit, the twins exclaimed. They didn't expect anyone to try it. Seeing that it was too late to stop, Peter quickly threw out a weapon to kill you, trying to disarm the big dung beast in Alan's mouth. Peter's magic successfully hit the big dung ball that was about to be bitten by Alan, and threw it out fiercely. It's just that Peter didn't control his strength, and the big dung slammed into the car window and exploded in an instant. A very strong feces smell instantly filled the entire space. Ouch! Everyone couldn't help the smell and vomited directly. Clean up, clean up. After throwing off 8 or 9 cleaning spells in a row, the odor is diffused, and it is useless at all. Peter broke down and yelled at the culprit twins, what the hell did you use? Why the spell doesn't work, it still smells so bad. Vomit. We just wanted to prevent filch from cleaning up with the magic spell, so we added some macrocoachine that couldn't be removed, and it would take at least half a day for it to dissipate on its own. The twins said while vomiting. A few people couldn't stand the odor, so they quickly opened the door of the carriage and escaped. Then the nearby carriages suffered. Wow, why is it so stinky? Who is shitting? Gosh, did the toilet explode? It stinks. Peter and the others heard the cursing of the students around them and silently closed the compartment door. Then they stood quietly at the door, looked at each other, and then burst out laughing. We need to stand outside for half a day before we can go back to the car. Maybe we can go to another car, otherwise our legs will be broken. Cedric suggested. What about the luggage in that carriage? Just stay here, Alan asked. What else can you do, unless you can rush in now and get your stuff out? But I'm afraid the luggage smells bad now, Fred asked rhetorically. Don't worry about the luggage, the house elves will put us in the dormitory when we arrive at the station. Peter said. Fortunately, some students stayed at the school during the Christmas holiday, so there were still some empty seats. After everyone found an empty carriage and sat down, Alan took out a piece of parchment from his backpack, took out a delicate pen, and quickly said to Peter, "Your potion homework has been done, copy it for me, I'll do the homework for this class." "I haven't done it yet. It would be miserable if the dean caught it. If you want to copy, don't copy all of it, or Professor Snape will easily see it, and you will be miserable." Peter showed Alan the homework and reminded him. "Understood, I only copied the important parts, and I can copy the textbooks in other places." Alan nodded and said. The twins looked at Alan, who was copying the homework, and looked at each other, relatively speechless. "George, we seem to have forgotten about homework," Fred said blankly. "We've been studying big shit all day, where do we have time to do our homework?" "Fred, do you think we can be saved?" George said with tears in his eyes. "No help. Wait to die," Peter and Cedric said in unison. "No, I think we can still be saved." George struggled and said, then grabbed Peter's arm and said flatteringly, "Peter, the most handsome Peter. You are our friend, we can't wait for help. Hurry up and save me. Emergency, we learn from your masterpiece. And it's all. There are 13 chapters of parchment in the homework for the holidays. Are you sure you have finished writing them?" Peter looked at them questioningly. "Merlin's stinky socks. Why so many?" The twins were dumbfounded, then gritted their teeth and said with certainty, "Sure, we won't sleep tonight. We must finish them all. Tomorrow's first class will be Professor McGonagall's class, and the afternoon will be Potion's class. Both professors are very strict. Are you sure you won't go to sleep in class just because you're sleepy?" Peter asked again. "It's okay, tomorrow morning, we'll go to Madame Pomfrey, say we're sick, and drink a bottle of energy potion, so we won't be sleepy by then." The twins figured out a way to deal with it. "Good luck to you then." Peter shrugged, lending them his homework. As they got out of the car, Peter was again in the spotlight. Only this time, many students looked at him with awe, as if he would fire a spell at himself at any time. "Let's go, this is the hero of our battle against the Dark Wizard, remember to be polite." "It's you, the guilty-faced Hufflepuff, have you done something bad, why are you so afraid to see our Peter?" Twins. They put them on Peter's shoulders, surrounded him, and said to the people around them in a funny tone, trying to ease the atmosphere at this time. Alan and Cedric also surrounded Peter, guarding him like guards, separating the surrounding students from him. "Peter, did you really kill 12 dark wizards as the Daily Prophet said?" a Gryffindor student asked boldly, looking at him curiously and fearfully. Peter turned his head to look at him and asked with a smile, 067, I remember you are from the Muggle world like me, right? Have the right to shoot and kill, not responsible. Think about it if a group of terrorists broke into your home. They want to hurt you and your family, and you happen to have a gun that can protect your family. Would you be willing to pick up a gun and fight the terrorists? Peter did not directly answer the classmate's words, but assumed a reason and asked back, looking at him gently, waiting for his answer. Of course I am willing to pick up a gun to protect my family. If anyone dares to hurt my family, I will fight him desperately. The student of Gryffindor said in a righteous manner, looking at Peter's eyes. It also gradually changed from awe just now to worship. So, why should I worry about whether I kill the Dark Wizard, instead of thinking about how to learn magic well so that I can protect myself and my relatives and friends? Maybe some people will think that it is too cruel that I killed 12 dark wizards. But please think about it, everyone, there are 12 dark wizards who are far more powerful than me. If you can't kill you in one blow, then it will be me and my family who will die. Maybe at this time, you can learn from the newspapers, see my obituary. So, classmates, I want to give you a piece of advice. If you encounter the same crisis in the future, please don't have any hesitation. If you can't make the enemy unable to resist as easily as Dumbledore, then don't leave it to the enemy to fight back against you. Opportunity. Of course, I'm not advocating to kill them, but that after defeating the enemy, it is better to add a stun spell directly to him than to do nothing at all. Peter spoke slowly to the people around him in a way of speaking, and his voice was just enough for those around him to hear. On the hillside in the distance, Dumbledore stood with an old wizard who looked somewhat introverted, quietly listening to Peter's movements below. Is he quite gifted in speech? He changed the fears of the students around him so quickly. Language is a very magical magic, Dumbledore exclaimed. He reminds me of the speech that Grindelwald gave in France in 1927. The old wizard looked a little complicated, looking at the boy below. It's also very inspiring. Dumbledore, are you sure I can teach defense against the dark arts well? The old wizard said with some unease. If it's a magical beast, I'm somewhat confident, but I'm not good at defense against the dark arts. Newt, you can't be so arrogant. You have been exploring all kinds of dangerous places in the world all these years, and you can conquer so many dangerous magical animals, which is not something ordinary people can do. Dumbledore comforted the somewhat withdrawn old wizard, encouraged, if none of you are suitable, I don't know who else is qualified for the defense against the dark arts position. When the students got into the carriage and went back to the castle, Peter walked to the front of the carriage and looked at Thestral carefully. This time he could see Thestrals, apparently the 12 dead dark wizards, let him witness death. Peter, have you been able to see Thestrals? Cedric walked up and asked, and then asked curiously, is the appearance of Thestrals you saw the same as the description in the book? Aren't you afraid? Peter asked in surprise. The last time Cedric was very resistant. Why did he change his attitude after not seeing him for a few days? I asked my dad when I got home, and my dad said that the Minister of Magic's transportation was a flying carriage pulled by Thestrals. So aside from being able to make it visible to anyone who's seen death, it's also special. There's nothing scary about it. Cedric was a little embarrassed by his last reaction. Really, I thought the Thestrals were only used for Hogwarts carriages. I didn't expect the Ministry of Magic to do the same, Peter said in surprise, then reached out and touched the Thestrals, and found that they didn't feel the same to the touch. Not so rude. The school has a flying carriage. How come I've never seen it before? Alan asked in surprise, sticking his head out of the carriage. Of course, in addition to the Hogwarts Express, the school also has a flying carriage. Generally, there are major off-campus activities, and the school will drive a flying carriage, carrying students and professors to participate. It's just that Hogwarts has not participated in off-campus activities in recent years, so the flying carriage can only be stored in the warehouse to eat ashes. Peter explained. We've been living in the magic world since we were young. Why do you know more than us? The twins said in a ghostly tone. Alan and Cedric on the side had the same expressions. Read more. It's got everything you want to know, Peter said earnestly. Your words always make me feel like we are empty-headed scumbags. The twins were instantly discouraged. Aren't you? Alan and Cedric asked silently. At the dinner, Dumbledore announced the new Defense Against the Dark Arts professor to the crowd. This is Newt Scamander, who will be teaching you defense against the dark arts for the next half-term. Let's give him a warm welcome. Newt Scamander was a little uncomfortable sitting on the professor seat on the stage. After Dumbledore announced, he stood up awkwardly and nodded to everyone. Merlin, it's Master Scamander. He actually came to teach us defense against the dark arts. Isn't he supposed to teach the protection of magical animals? A student said in surprise. As an internationally renowned expert on fantastic beasts and the author of the best-selling Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, Newt Scamander is world-renowned. When the students heard that such a famous person came to teach them defense against the dark arts, they were very surprised and applauded enthusiastically. Especially the little badgers of Hufflepuff were even more excited, cheering and shouting, "This is the Master Scamander of our academy." In the days that followed, it was business as usual, with the exception of Peter's increased fame, not much in life. The arrival of Newt Scamander has really brought the Defense Against the Dark Arts class back to life. He combined the defense against the dark arts and the magical animals he was good at. Every day, he took the students to experience different magical animals, and explained how to deal with them, plus magic practice from time to time. Let Defense Against the Dark Arts quickly become one of the most popular courses. Especially after getting Dumbledore's permission, Newt brought his suitcase into the classroom, allowing the students to personally go to the world in the box and visit the various magical animals inside, making everyone linger. Even the Fantastic Beasts teacher, Professor Keitel Byrne, complained with a smile that Newt stole his limelight, and now students are complaining that his class is not as interesting as Defense Against the Dark Arts. For the purpose of making friends, Peter actively asked the withdrawn Professor Scamander for questions. He contributed his own phoenix to attract the attention of this magical animal lover, and finally succeeded in making friends with Scamander. The days passed quickly, and in the blink of an eye it was time for the end of the period. The students were all caught up in the busy review stage. The professors seemed to want to stuff all the knowledge into the empty heads of these students and assign a lot of homework in this short period of time. Only Peter still went to the library to read extracurricular books very leisurely, which was in sharp contrast with the students around him. "Ah, I'm going crazy." George scratched his hair frantically, and had nowhere to start with the transformation work. "Be quiet, this is the library. Mrs. Pants is here. Be careful he throws you out," Alan reminded quickly. At this time, the 5 of them were sitting together and doing heavy homework. Peter's small group, very distinct in the school, consists of Slytherin, Gryffindor and Hufflepuff. Personalities are also different. The twins are lively, Ellen is a bit arrogant and cunning, Cedric is shy, and Peter is calm. But they all use Peter as the intersection point and get together to form a group. There used to be Gryffindor students who couldn't bear to see the twins having a good time with Slytherin students, and spread rumors in the academy that they were Slytherin's undercover agents. As a result, when I went to the toilet the next day, I was covered with a cloth bag and beaten. Then the student ran to Professor McGonagall with a bruised face and complained that the Weasley twins did it. But in fact, the twins were in confinement in Professor McGonagall's office at this time, and there was no time to commit the crime, so the matter was not settled. But in fact it was Alan who did it, and he admitted it afterwards, saying that he couldn't stand such rumor mongers. Since this incident, the twins and Alan have not been as polite as before, and gradually became real friends. The shy little badger Cedric also easily integrated into the group and became one of them. For their group, the professors expressed their approval after the initial surprise. In particular, Professor McGonagall was worried at the beginning that this group would bully others like the former Taoist group of Fort James Potter 4. But under Peter's leadership, the group behaved friendly to the outside world and was completely relieved. Only Professor Flitwick is a little dissatisfied, thinking that Peter and their group should have at least one Ravenclaw friend, so that they can get together for colleges. "Why are you so leisurely, Peter?" Fred said enviously when he saw Peter leisurely reading his extracurricular books. "If you can master all the knowledge of the first grade, and then finish the homework in time after each get out of class, you can be as relaxed as me," Peter said without looking up. "I'm sure Peter will come first in the final exam. Those Ravenclaw nerds can't beat him," George said with certainty. "You still have to say it, but those Ravenclaw students don't seem to agree. I heard from others that the Ravenclaw seniors have been helping with their first-year homework these days. Want to push Peter down in the final exam," Alan said with a gossip on his face. "Then they are doing nothing. Peter is able to memorize all these books," Cedric said with a smile, obviously very confident in Peter. "It's time for the final exam soon." The first test was the theoretical knowledge of each subject. In order to prevent students from cheating, the professors issued special quills to let them take the test. The first section is the Transfiguration Theory test. The theory test is selected from the textbook, so Peter filled in all the answers very easily. In less than half an hour, Peter, who was done, reached out and handed in the paper. In the surprised eyes around, Peter handed the paper to Professor McGonagall. "No more checks?" Professor McGonagall asked, looking unsurprised. After all, Peter is a scholar and is already known to everyone. "I have checked it twice and found no problems, so I handed it in," Peter replied calmly. "Okay, then you can leave first. Don't forget the practice exam in the afternoon." Professor McGonagall smiled at Peter, and every teacher likes good students. Peter nodded, and walked out of the examination room under the collapsed and envious eyes of many students. "Ah, is this guy hitting me? I can't even remember Gamp's law of transformation, but he finished it in half an hour. It's going to die." A student frantically looked at the papers on the table. "Quiet, if you finish it like Peter York, you can hand it in," Professor McGonagall said, but looking at some students who couldn't do it and wanted to hand in the paper, his expression became serious, and said, "But if the early submission does not reach you if you get good grades, then you should follow the students of the next grade well in the next semester, and let's take the Transfiguration class of the first grade together." The students below suddenly died down, sitting obediently in their seats and thinking hard, trying to squeeze a little knowledge out of their empty heads. In the afternoon for the practical exam of transfiguration, the students lined up outside the classroom, waiting for the professor to call in and take the exam. When it was Peter's turn to go in, Professor McGonagall smiled and said to him, "I know that the content of the first grade is not difficult for you, so now you show me your most successful transfiguration. If I am amazed, in the full score basically, I'm considering giving you extra points." Peter thought for a while, then pointed at a cup on the table with his wand, and clicked, the cup instantly turned into a very beautiful oriole, and it chirped happily, flew around and landed on the table. Professor McGonagall was very surprised to pick up the vivid oriole bird on the table, after careful observation. He said very happily, "Excellent. I didn't expect that you have practiced transfiguration to the point of turning a dead thing into a living thing. I can only do so much, and anything bigger will fail." Peter said dissatisfied. Hearing that, Professor McGonagall's mouth twitched. The student didn't know if he was really humble or if he was in Versailles. Such transfiguration has far surpassed his peers. Then Professor McGonagall gave Peter a full score, and then said to him with a smile, "I would like to invite you to join my Transfiguration Club, and start studying more advanced transfiguration with other members next semester. I don't know about you. Would you like to?" Transfiguration Club. Peter looked at Professor McGonagall in surprise, then nodded happily, "Of course, Professor McGonagall." After a week of intense exams, students can finally breathe a sigh of relief. It's finally over. What a nightmare. The Weasley twins cheered excitedly. "Peter, what year was the Goblins' Rebellion? I don't know if I did the right question on the history of magic." Cedric asked worriedly. 1612. Peter replied. Then I remember correctly. I thought I did it wrong," Cedric said with a sigh of relief. Speaking of which, Cedric is also an academic bully. Among the students of the same grade, except for Peter, no one is his opponent. "I said you two are enough. Now that the exam is over, let's relax," Alan said resentfully. "You two masters, let others have a way to survive. Especially you, Cedric Diggory. You just came out of the magic history exam room with a sad face. I thought you had failed the exam, and I comforted you. As a result, what you called a failed exam is that you failed in one question. Remember, it hurts. That's right, it's really stressful to be friends with the two of you. I think when I go back from vacation, I must not let my mother and the others know about Peter and Cedric's grades, or we will suffer," the twins said at the same time. Peter and Cedric looked at each other and silently put down the question. If there's one thing that frustrates the students of all three houses at the same time, it's that Slytherin wins the House Cup. If there's anything more frustrating than that, it's that they also win the Quidditch Cup. Slytherin awarded Peter hundreds of credits for receiving the Merlin Class 2 medal. Let Slytherin directly change from the second last to the first positive number. And under the blatant favoritism of Snape behind, the score directly surpassed the second Ravenclaw by more than 100 points. There is no chance to chase. As for Gryffindor, who has never fought against Slytherin, until now, the Academy scores are still in the single digits. After they were deducted 500 points from the first group fight, they completely gave up chasing the Academy Cup. At the year-end banquet, Peter and Alan came to the auditorium together. The auditorium is decorated in green and silver everywhere, and on the wall behind the professor's chair, there is a huge banner with a giant Slytherin. On the long table of Slytherin, the students said this aloud, their words filled with joy and confidence in winning the House Cup and Quidditch Cup, and their heads were raised to the ceiling. In contrast, the students at the other three tables were all sitting quietly in their seats, without the slightest hint of joy on their faces. Ravenclaw's students looked frustrated. They finally got the closest to the Academy Cup, and their hopes were directly dashed by Peter's 300-point bonus. And Gryffindor is gnashing their teeth. They originally put their hopes on the Quidditch Cup. As a result, in the first game, Slytherin shamelessly knocked out the Gryffindor Seeker with a stick. They completely disqualified from the competition. As for Hufflepuff, it's a student who doesn't really like Slytherin, and would rather win by Gryffindor or Ravenclaw. Peter looked at Slytherin's own happiness, and the silent atmosphere of the other three academies, and couldn't help shaking his head. The people of Slytherin boasted of being smart and cunning, but Peter couldn't see where they had it. Aren't smart people supposed to use various methods to put themselves in an advantageous position? But looking at the way Slytherin is making enemies everywhere, it's no wonder that it is called a breeding base for Death Eaters. Before long, the professors all arrived. With the arrival of the professors, the noise of the students gradually subsided. It's been another year. Dumbledore stood up, raised his hand to signal silence, and looked at the students below happily. You sure don't like an old man making clichés here, but I'm still going to make a final statement on the college score. Summary. The individual colleges' scores are as follows. 4th, Gryffindor, 55 points. 3rd, Hufflepuff, 287 points. 2nd, Ravenclaw, 358 points. 1st, Slytherin, 448 points. As soon as the words fell, the students at the Slytherin long table burst into thunderous cheers. The classmates around Peter jumped onto the chairs one by one and threw the wizard hat into the air. Peter sat in his seat, clapping and smiling as his roommate Alan was dancing with excitement. Many senior students came over and shook hands with Peter enthusiastically. Because of his 300 bonus points, Slytherin surpassed Ravenclaw and won the Academy Cup in one fell swoop. Professor Snape, who was on the professor's chair, showed a rare smile on his face, and shook hands with Professor Flitwick, who was congratulating him next to him. While congratulating Slytherin on winning the House Cup, we would also like to congratulate the 7th-year students who are about to leave Hogwarts and congratulate them on graduating from Hogwarts. I wish you all the best in the future. Dumbledore changed the subject and said, looking at the 7th-grade student sitting at the end of the long table, his eyes were full of blessings. Hearing Dumbledore's words, Peter realized that the 7th graders who were about to leave the school were saying goodbye to the surrounding students with reluctance. Tonight was their last night at Hogwarts, and once they left, it would be hard to come here again. Among the 7th graders, Peter is most familiar with fellow Spell Club member Lauren Gossack, who has done very well, but his biggest goal is to compile a book like his grandma Miranda Gossack. An encyclopedia of spells. During this period of time, Peter became closer to him, and with his help, he successfully mastered his unique stunt, turning the launched spell. Able to bypass the obstacles in front of him unexpectedly, directly attack the target. Peter got up, went to Ravenclaw's long table, and said to Lauren Gossack, "Congratulations on your graduation, Lauren. What are you going to do next?" Lauren gave Peter a bear hug, and the 1.9-meter big man directly set off Peter's small body, making it weak and fragile. "I'm really reluctant to leave school. But for my dream, for my encyclopedia of spells, I'm going to collect materials on spells next." Lauren stated his plan. Backquote, "Maybe go to Egypt or Greece first, which is the birthplace of magic, and should be able to come into contact with different magic spells. Then wish you can realize your dream as soon as possible and become the master of magic spells as famous as your grandma." Peter sincerely wished. "Thank you, Peter, if it wasn't for your funding, I probably wouldn't have started my dream so soon," Lauren said gratefully. After Lauren stated his ideals, Peter proposed to help him to complete the compilation of the Encyclopedia of Charms. This surprised him. To know that compiling a book, especially if you need to travel around the world, requires financial support. Although the Gossack family is pure blood, the family's money cannot support him to run around the world. He originally wanted to collect materials for spells while working, but it would take more time. But unexpectedly, Peter, the rich man, proposed to help him, which solved his worries. "Don't be so polite, Lauren, just remember to give me the first book you compiled," Peter said with a smile. He subsidized Lauren. On the one hand, he wanted to befriend the Zhe Wangjiao Shack family and help him accomplish this grand ideal. On the other hand, because the system has issued a task, as long as he successfully helps Lauren to complete the Encyclopedia of Spells, he can get a reward of 50 points. Although this point reward is too far away, as long as the money is spent, it is not a problem for Peter. "Of course, when I finish the task, I will personally send you the first Encyclopedia of Enchantments," Lauren Gossack assured with a smile. "It looks like you guys are having a good time chatting. Can you add me?" A shrill voice came flying from the side. "Professor Flitwick," Peter and Lauren exclaimed in surprise. "I have heard what you said just now, but Lauren, maybe you can put your first destination in the United States. The Indian wizards there also have a unique understanding of spells, and maybe you can have a different harvest." suggested Professor Flitwick with a smile. In a week's time, the International Wizarding Duel Tournament will be held in the United States, explained Professor Flitwick, looking at Peter and Lauren. I hope you will be able to participate. You have a talent for dueling, you can go their style. At London Airport, Peter was sitting in the waiting hall, looking at the strange eyes around him, and wanted to bury his head in the chair. At this moment, sitting beside him are Professor Flitwick and Lauren Goshek. It's just that these two people have obviously never been to the Muggle world. At this time, Professor Flitwick is wearing a set of children's clothes, and it is also a women's style. As for Lauren Goshek, it's a set of beach shorts and a leather jacket, and the whole person is like coming out of a mental hospital. The strange appearance of the two almost made the security guard at the airport kick them out as mentally ill. After finally getting on the plane, the two wizards had never been on a plane before, their butts seemed to be on fire, and they kept looking around. Seriously, Muggles have no magic powers, but their minds are full of whimsy. When I was very young, I never even guessed that Muggles would develop into this, Professor Flitwick said with a sigh, but with the children's clothes on him, it looks particularly funny. Peter tried his best to ignore the professor's clothes, then grabbed Lauren, who had been looking left and right with his head outstretched. Professor, why do we have to take a Muggle plane over there? Don't I remember there is a kind of door key that can teleport over long distances? Peter asked, puzzled. The door key is indeed a very effective way to travel, but the Magic Congress of the United States has a very strict ban, and we are short on time, so it is too late to apply to them for entry. Now you can only report to the Magical Congress after arriving via Muggle traffic. Arriving with a door key would be considered a smuggling and you would be put in jail, Professor Flitwick explained. The next morning, with a passenger plane landing at New York Airport, the three of Peter finally got off the plane. Merlin, this Muggle plane is good, but it's too much tossing my old arms and legs. Professor Flitwick twisted his waist and said tiredly. Me too, this seat is too cramped. I can't even move. Lauren, who is 1.9 meters tall, complained with outstretched arms, and I asked the waiter to open the window for some air, but the waiter actually ignored me. When Peter heard this, he was speechless. If the flight attendants really listened to you, it would be a ghost. Let me see, how does the Magic Congress go? Professor Flitwick took out a map and studied it carefully. Where is the Woolworth building? Professor, we can just call a taxi, it doesn't have to be so troublesome, Peter said quickly. Well, you know Muggle things best, and we'll take your word for it and call that taxi thing, Professor Flitwick agreed. After tossing all the way, the three finally came to the Woolworth building. From the outside, the building looks indistinguishable from the surrounding buildings. Professor Flitwick led them to the front of the building and said to the middle-aged guard, "We are wizards from the UK. We are here to participate in the International Wizarding Duel competition. We need to register." The doorman looked at the three, especially after seeing Professor Flitwick's girls' clothes and Lauren's weird clothes. The corners of his mouth twitched, and he quickly opened the closed door and motioned them to enter. Behind the gate is a super high-speed revolving door, and the scene inside can be vaguely seen. As soon as he entered the Woolworth building, Peter looked at the magnificent setting in surprise and couldn't help exclaiming. Here is a luminous lobby about 700 feet high with a cathedral-like ceiling. A huge monument is erected at the entrance to the Magic Congress, honoring those lost in the Salem witch trials. It's amazing here, wizards and muggles share a building, but they all seem to live in parallel worlds that don't interfere with each other, and can't affect each other. Come with me, let's go to the wand licensing office and apply for a wand license, Professor Flitwick said to the two students behind him after looking around for 4 weeks. Professor, what is a wand license for? Why haven't I heard of it? Lauren Goshek asked suspiciously. AC/DC. It's similar to your traces, except that they have a wand license, which all wizards need to apply for. The Magic Congress can track all magical activities through a wand license, and identify the perpetrator through the wand, Professor Flitwick said. Ah, it's been a while since I got off the trace, and now I have another wand license. What a bad luck. Lauren Goshak's expression was full of reluctance. Don't be reluctant, even an old man like me has to apply, what can you refuse? Professor Flitwick said with a smile. When I came to the elevator, there was a house elf who was in charge of pressing the elevator door. After seeing the three of them, he asked impatiently, "Which floor are we going to?" "Go to the wand licensing office," replied Professor Flitwick. Hearing this, the house elf stretched out a wooden stick and pressed it on the elevator button on the 6th floor. Lauren quietly watched in surprise, this house elf in a formal suit. "Haven't seen a house elf, kid," said the house elf suddenly to Lauren. "Ah, I just haven't seen a house elf like you. The house elves in our place are all honored to serve wizards," Lauren said hesitantly. "Shout, a bunch of poor brainwashed by wizards," said the house elf sarcastically. After getting off the elevator, the three came to the wand licensing office. After a period of questioning like a prisoner, the officer in charge finally agreed, and the three applied for the wand license. After getting the wand license, the three went to the Division of Magical Sports. Because this session of the Wizarding Duel Contest is organized by the Magical Congress of the United States. Therefore, all participants must first apply for a registration form to the sports department before they can officially participate in the competition. The International Wizarding Duel Competition is divided into youth group and adult group. Peter is competing in the youth group, and Lauren, who has just grown up, can only play in the senior group. Peter is only 12 years old now and should be the youngest participant in the youth group. At 18, Lauren is the youngest in the adult group. It can be said that neither of them has an age advantage in their own competition group. In this regard, Professor Flitwick is very confident, and he is full of expectations for his two students. In his words, the level of wizard duels is getting lower and lower now, and if they can't win, they are going to kill him. Peter and Lauren can only express their best efforts to meet Professor Flitwick's expectations. After filling out the application form, officials from the sports department gave them a button-like door key that could go directly to the duel scene. The three of them held the door key together and disappeared into the sports office in an instant. With a whirlwind, three people appeared on an island. At 3:16 in the afternoon, the headquarters of the Magic Congress in New York. A black wizard said weakly, and then pointed to a basket beside him with his mouth, "Please put the door key in the basket, we have to recycle it." Professor Flitwick threw the key in his hand into the basket, then handed the entry form to the black wizard and asked, "Where do the contestants live?" The black wizard looked at the registration form and replied, "Participants and their companions, please go to Area 16, your tent is number 55, don't remember wrong." The three followed the directions to Area 16 and found their own tent. The tent looked very ordinary from the outside, but when they walked in, they took a look at the large space of 3 bedrooms and 1 living room, which was indeed very luxurious because the tents used no traces. Stretching mantra, so the interior is very spacious. After the repairs, Professor Flitwick let them move freely, and he went to find an old friend to catch up. "Come on, let's go see this island. I heard that this island was hidden with magic a long time ago, and no muggles have been here for hundreds of years," Lauren said enthusiastically. The island was very lively at this time, at least tens of thousands of wizards gathered here. They came from all over the world, and their skin colors were different. There are also many vendors pushing small carts, apparating and appearing in various positions while shouting. After Peter and Lauren walked around, they were already stuffed with all kinds of gadgets they bought. The most interesting is the voodoo doll, which belongs to the prank props, as long as the target person's personal objects are attached to the doll, and then the voodoo doll can be used to trick the target. This thing Peter bought from an old black woman for 10 galleons. From what the old woman said, she was simplified based on the black magic curse of voodoo. Otherwise, according to the power of the original voodoo doll, it is possible to control the other party, and life and death are controlled by the other party. After walking around for an afternoon, the two of them ate a lot of food before slowly returning to the tent. Tomorrow is the duel competition, but both of them have a relaxed look, and in addition to having confidence in their own strength, they also have the idea of according to fate. Especially Lauren, his opponents are all adult wizards, and there are even wizards several decades older than him, so it is not easy to win. At night, after assigning rooms, the three of them greeted each other and went back to their respective rooms to rest. After a day of tossing, they were all exhausted. Let's keep our spirits up for tomorrow's duel match. On the 9th of July, the island of Fogo, hidden by the magic of the sorcerers. The most central position of the island, in a building like the Colosseum. Tens of thousands of spectators sat around on the high platform, quietly watching the duel competition below. At this moment, on the duel arena, the two wizards, who looked to be 16 or 17 years old, were in a fierce duel. The wands in their hands kept firing various spells, causing the surrounding protection circle to tremble. Peter sat in the waiting area next to him, his eyes fixed on the two dueling on the field, constantly analyzing their strength and trying to learn their spellcasting skills. This morning is the qualifier for the youth group. There are more than 50 participants in total. They choose their opponents by drawing lots, and the winning side can enter the next round of competition. The loser also has a chance to challenge. If they can successfully challenge, they can continue to participate in the competition. Otherwise, they can only leave with regret. Lauren, who had no games in the morning, was also sitting next to Peter at this time. Seeing that Peter kept silent, he thought he was nervous, and quickly comforted, "You don't have to be too nervous, you can beat me at the club, let alone these people. You don't look at their spells flying and they look very powerful, but in fact they are useless at all. When dueling, everyone is looking for a way to defeat them, instead of being cool here. They are not your opponents at all. I'm not nervous, I'm just learning some of their dueling skills," Peter said with a laugh, "and it looks like they're going to have a close game, and I'll be in the next match." As soon as the words were finished, one of the wizards in the competition field unexpectedly defeated his opponent with a disarming spell and won the game. Deafening cheers and applause erupted from the surrounding audience. "It's my turn to play." Peter took off his coat and walked slowly towards the stage with his wand in hand. The audience on the field, seeing one of the players on the field, looked at only 11 or 12 years old, and suddenly made a sound of surprise. The contestants in these youth groups are basically students from magic schools all over the world. But they belong to the 6th and 7th grades, 16 and 17-year-old students, and even the talented ones are the 4th and 5th graders. They've never seen a child of 11 or 12 come to a wizarding duel contest. There were some boos on the field, thinking that this should not be to make up the number. Now it's an interesting duel between Peter York, a 12-year-old from Hogwarts, England. On the other side is 17-year-old Abraham Richard from Beaubatons, France. Let's see what kind of surprises their showdown will bring. The commentator was also surprised to see a group of players with such a big age gap, and then explained with great interest. After carefully checking that the wands of both sides were okay, the referee announced the start of the game and opened a protective shield around the competition table to prevent the players' spells from flying out and hitting the referee or the audience. "You look too young, I won't be too happy to beat you, you should just admit defeat. This is not the place you should be." Abraham Richard frowned and said to Peter, his words full of contemptuous tone. "You said it too early, and age has never been a standard line for dividing strength." Peter couldn't understand his awkward English, and said to him directly in fluent French. Abraham looked at the little boy with a calm face in front of him in surprise, and couldn't help but feel a little less contempt, but still said contemptuously, "Perhaps you have some strength, but this is not your Hogwarts, and I won't give you your humble." To each other, Peter retorted, "This is not just about romantic France, duels are cruel, not for you garden flowers." Humph, humph, both of them did not like each other, and after the standard mutual salute, the two returned to their respective areas, and until the referee announced the start, they directly launched a spell to attack each other. "Accept your weapons. It's all petrified. Armor protection. Armor protection." After both of them issued an attacking spell to each other, they directly added an iron armor spell to themselves to avoid being hit by the other's spell. After some probing, the two began to exert their strength, and saw that Abraham directly appeared behind Peter, and gave him a passed out. There are many obstacles, a lot of obstacles. Peter hurriedly released 2 obstacle spells to block, jumped back to avoid the spell attack, and countered a fracture. The two fought back and forth on the field, watching the audience stunned. They thought it was a one-sided match, but they didn't expect Peter York, a 12-year-old boy, to be able to fight a 17-year-old wizard back and forth. Abraham's apparition is very good. He is directly on the field, and uses teleportation to keep attacking around Peter. If Peter's protective spell is not good, I'm afraid he would have been hit by his spell long ago. Flying sand and moving rocks. Peter directly rolled up the flying sand on the ground and rushed towards Abraham. Then, when he didn't notice, he directly gave himself a disillusionment spell and added a fire and water invulnerability. Abraham cleaned up these flying sand and stones with a new cleanup, and then found that Peter on the field was gone, and immediately observed the surroundings vigilantly. Burning flames. Abraham directly amplified his moves, setting the entire stage on fire, trying to force Peter out. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.